Chapter 999. Shoichi Daishin had one hand on the edge of Ding of Shenzhou, but his eyes were looking in the direction of the Gate of Star Ocean. Hearing his question, Lin Feng raised his eyebrows slightly and asked indifferently, "Shoichi Daishin, what is your intention?" Shoichi Daishin said slowly, "In your hands, a Gate of Star Ocean is just a fixed passage to the Sea of Stars. Although it is also of extraordinary value, in fact, it can play a more important role for the Divine Land." Lin Feng's expression did not change. "Shoichi Daishin, do you mean that the Haotian mirror can use a Gate of Star Ocean to locate the other 5 gates?" Shoichi Daishin answered, "More than 50% sure." Lin Feng nodded. 50% sure? That's not low. Hearing this, Shoichi Daishin waved at the Gate of Star Ocean that was floating in the distant starry sky. Unexpectedly, on the other side of the gate, there was a sudden surge of mana, which fixed the Gate of Star Ocean in place, making it impossible for Shoichi Daishin to collect it. Seeing this, Xianlin Taoist frowned slightly. Shoichi Daishin also looked at Lin Feng. "Your sect is far-sighted and I cannot compare. Thank you in advance." Lin Feng's expression was as usual, and his tone was indifferent. "Although I have never come into contact with it, I should be able to get along well with the Haotian mirror." Hearing this, Shoichi Daishin's pair of snow-white long eyebrows trembled slightly, and he stared at Lin Feng. "So the master of the Gate of Star Ocean is making fun of me." Lin Feng said indifferently, "Why do you say that, fellow Taoist? If you really want to say something, I should be the one asking Shoichi Daishin to stop making fun of me." Shoichi Daishin's expression was calm. His fingers on the edge of the Ding of Shenzhou caressed the body of the cauldron. "If that's the case, there's nothing else we can discuss." Lin Feng smiled. "What did Shoichi Daishin want to talk about?" "I ceded the Gate of Shanghai to you, but you won't interfere with Ding of Shenzhou?" Not necessarily. Although I don't have a deep understanding of your sect, I still know some of the most basic things." Slowly, Shoichi Daishin shook his head. "Of course not." On the side, Xianlin Taoist said calmly, "Ding of Shenzhou is of great importance and has far-reaching implications. My temple will not ignore it. However, if the master of the Gate of Star Ocean is willing to give up the Gate of Shanghai for the sake of the public, then the matter of Ding of Shenzhou can be discussed again. A magic treasure of creation cannot be divided into 2, so naturally, it cannot be cut. Therefore, you can find a medium-class world and temporarily place it in a place that does not belong to Xianmen Tianzong. My temple will not bring it back to White Cloud Mountain, and both sides will look after it together. Otherwise, we can set a time limit and take turns to look after it." Lin Feng had a faint smile on his face. "Is this the plan of your sect?" Shoichi Daishin said slowly, "Ding of Shenzhou is the Ding of Shenzhou of the Divine Land. This is also the wish of Xia Huang in the past." Lin Feng chuckled. "In the same way, the Haotian mirror is also the Haotian mirror of the Divine Land. Can it be dealt with in the same way?" Hearing this, Shoichi Daishin's expression was as usual, but Xianlin Taoist frowned slightly. Lin Feng looked at Xianlin Taoist calmly. "The Haotian mirror is different from the Supreme Yin-Yang mirror. Although I am ignorant, I still know about this matter." Xianlin Taoist's brows relaxed, and his expression became calm again. The Xiantian seal and the Zhangtian Dao Jian were both in Lin Feng's hands. The situation of the Xiantian seal was still unknown, but the Zhangtian Dao Jian had clearly expressed its submission. These 2 Mahayana treasures had existed since the ancient times. Perhaps they were not clear about some secrets back then, but they naturally knew about some things that were not secrets in the ancient times in detail. Especially in the last years of the ancient times, the information that the higher-ups of the heavenly gates had grasped was quite extensive. Shoichi Daishin shook his head. "In that case, there's really nothing to talk about." Lin Feng looked at him, and his smile gradually disappeared. He said indifferently, "Shoichi Daishin, there's nothing to talk about from the beginning. The Gate of Star Ocean belongs to me. The battle for Ding of Shenzhou will be based on our own abilities. It's that simple." Lin Feng said indifferently, "What makes you feel that your esteemed sect can use your status as the ruler to coordinate and distribute their ownership? What makes you think that you can use Ding of Shenzhou, which doesn't belong to you, to exchange for the gate of Star Ocean from me. Shoichi Daishin looked straight into Lin Feng's eyes. Lin Feng looked back at him calmly and said lightly, I know that in your sect's internal disagreement, whether it's you or Xianlin Taoist, you all regard the Taishu Temple as the dominator of the divine land. Considering things from this position, it's no wonder that you've come up with such an idea. However, first of all, not everyone in your sect thinks the same as you too, and the overall policy of your sect doesn't seem to be the same. Second, Lin Feng shook his head gently. With the current divine land, even if everyone in your sect thinks the same as you can't be the dominator of China. As soon as he said this, Shoichi Daishin was silent, and Xianlin Taoist's pupils suddenly shrank. Lin Feng's tone was calm, as if he was talking about something that couldn't be more ordinary, something that everyone knew and there was no doubt about. After a long time, Xianlin Taoist's eyes became calm again. Dominator? It's not your turn. Lin Feng said calmly, so, everyone will rely on their own ability. Some people act high and mighty, but it only makes others laugh. Xianlin Taoist shook his head slowly. Master Tai and the Temple Master and the others should really regret it. Lin Feng looked at him indifferently. I've always admired Master Tai and the others. If they really are as you say, then I'll look down on them. Since they have the courage to treat all living beings in the world as chess pieces, naturally, there should be a day when a chess piece jumps out of the chessboard and becomes a chess player like themselves. Yearning for the joy and harvest brought by success should also have the calmness and responsibility to bear failure, and the calmness and resourcefulness to make decisions when things go beyond one's expectations. If you keep wallowing in the emotions of failure, annoyance, shame, and regret. Lin Feng let out a light laugh, lightly saying, if that's the case, it's very easy for a chess player to degrade into a chess piece. Xianlin Taoist silently looked at Lin Feng. After a long while, he slowly nodded. Master of the Celestial Sect of Wonders is right. I made a mistake before. In the sea of stars, the stars were shining, and the stars rose and fell in the dark void of the universe. The two sides stood facing each other, and for a time they fell into silence. Shoichi Daishin suddenly flipped his palm, and a ball of light and shadow floated between him and Lin Feng. The face of Master Tai gradually appeared in the light and shadow. Master Tai closed his eyes, but looked at Lin Feng and said in a gentle tone, any dispute between us now is not good for the overall situation of the divine land. I hope that Master of the Celestial Sect of Wonders can focus on the public interest. Ding of Shenzhou is indeed of great importance to the entire divine land. If it can become a public joint management, it will be the most beneficial to the forces of our human race. The gate of the Sea of Stars was obtained by your own luck. It's really inconvenient for us to say too much about how to deal with it. But I think that the two of us can actually work together to find the other 5 gates of the Sea of Stars. This is a good thing for both sides and the divine land. Lin Feng looked at the Supreme One's supremacy, nodding his head after a while, cooperating to search and try to obtain the other 5 gates of the Sea of Stars. This proposal is feasible. As for the specifics, after I come out of the Sea of Stars this time, I will specially discuss with your sect. As for Ding of Shenzhou, we will make a decision after we communicate with the origin spirit in the cauldron. The origin spirit of the creation magic treasure was not non-existent, but it was as grand as the sky, like an independent will of the world. It had never been obvious, and was almost in a state of being half awake, half asleep, and half asleep. Whether it was Lin Feng or the Taishu Temple, if they wanted to collect the ownerless Ding of Shenzhou, they would need to communicate with the origin spirit in the cauldron. Of course, this kind of communication might not be like the communication of the spirit breeding, transformation, and Mahayana-level magic treasures. It might be a verbal communication, or it might be a purely mental communication. Hearing this, Master Tai nodded. That's good. After saying this, the light shadow disappeared. Tao Lord Righteous One remained silent. But after Tao Lord Daoi's silhouette disappeared, a few silhouettes lit up in his sea of consciousness. They belonged to Tao Lord Daoi, Yan Nanlai, Tao Lord Qing One, and Tao Lord Shen One. Master Tai, Master Qingyi, and Master Xian 1 all remained silent. Yan Nanlai sighed softly. There is finally hope to recapture the sea of stars that was lost in the last years of the ancient times. Slowly, Shoichi Daishin nodded. Master Qingyi said calmly, all signs show that Tenryu Gen's recovery speed is faster than expected. Our original plan needs to be brought forward. We need an opportunity, Master Xian once said. The king of the underworld is still hibernating, and there is no trace of him. Even if there is a possibility to recapture the Sea of Stars, the environment of the Sea of Stars is still not suitable. We can't control the situation, and neither can the demon race. The master of the Celestial Gate is still in a dilemma. The mysterious sea is the only suitable environment. Master Qingyi said, if we can lure Tenryu Gen out of the mysterious sea, it is also acceptable. However, he has finally endured humiliation for once in his life, and it is harder to change his mind once he has made up his mind. The big shots of the Taishu Temple were all silent. After a long time, Master Tai slowly said, act according to the original plan, and look for an opportunity. The others nodded. At the same time, Lin Feng was actually communicating with Wang Lin, who was next to him, through his divine sense. Little Lin, how is it? The appearance of the great devil's doppelganger was exactly the same as Wang Lin's. He replied calmly, it's just an old trick of a red face and a white face. It's simple and effective. It was a very simple but very practical technique in negotiations. First, throw out a condition that the other party would definitely not tolerate, and after lowering the other party's psychological expectations, put forward a relatively mild condition. This was much more likely to be accepted than throwing out a second condition directly. Lin Feng said lightly, it is indeed very simple, but the hidden message behind it is not simple at all, because this is a cooperation between Master Tai and Shoichi Daishin. In the process, Shoichi Daishin's face will be damaged, which is tantamount to suppressing the influence of the radicals in the Taishu Temple. Wang Lin's eyes flashed. The projection of Master Tai's magical power was brought to the Sea of Stars by Shoichi Daishin. If Shoichi Daishin himself is not willing, this kind of thing will not happen at all. In other words, Lin Feng nodded slightly, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. The internal thinking of Taishu Temple has begun to unify and reach a consensus, and it may not be the idea of appeasement. Chapter 1000. Lin Feng's gaze was calm as he communicated with Wang Lin through his divine sense. Although most of the time, the people in Taishu Temple can speak with the same voice, the divergence in principles will ultimately result in invisible internal friction. And when this colossus truly reaches a consensus and unifies its thoughts, the power contained within it will be quite astonishing. Lin Feng faintly smiled. History has proven this many times. Wang Lin's expression was tranquil while the great demon clone's ferocious aura permeated the surroundings. The two sides formed a contradictory conflict, but also harmonious unity. Silently, he said, Master, disciple understands what you mean. Lin Feng closed his eyes slightly and nodded. He did not say anything else and looked at Shoichi Daishin instead. Shoichi Daishin and Xianlin Taoist's expressions remained the same. Shoichi Daishin flicked his finger and a white cloud-shaped magic power landed on Ding of Shenzhou. Lin Feng's God of War clone also flicked his finger and a purple cloud flew out, touching Ding of Shenzhou as well. The huge and heavy cauldron trembled slightly. Immediately after, Ding of Shenzhou opened up again. Layers of spatial boundaries shifted and once again turned into a void world. This world flashed with rays of light and vaguely formed a shadow of light. The scene in the shadow of light changed, and the scene that appeared was a magnificent scene. Wind and clouds surged between heaven and earth. Many experts fought intensely. There were human experts who shattered the earth with a stomp of their feet, and there were peerless great demons who tore the sky with a single hand. A human cultivator dominated between heaven and earth. His flesh and blood were earth-shattering and covered the 8 desolates. He was tall like a giant god and was a martial arts expert of the Tao integration realm. He fiercely wrestled with a Tong Tian demonic ape of the unification of the astral soul's realm. He did not seem to be at a disadvantage at all. His two fists smashed down like giant hammers. Even the Tong Tian demonic ape, who was known for its physical strength, could not gain the upper hand. Is that the giant spirit sky-blasting hammer? Lin Feng's eyes flickered slightly. This mighty spirit godlike human Dao expert of the Dao integration realm looked very much like an expert from the ancient mighty spirit sect. In ancient times, the giant spirit sect was also quite famous. Their martial Dao of the physical body could shatter the void, and they would not be at a disadvantage when fighting against a great demon. However, this orthodoxy's inheritance had been completely annihilated in the ancient times, and now it no longer existed. However, its martial arts legacy had left quite a reputation in the history of the Divine Land. Although Lin Feng had not personally seen the giant spirit sky rumbling hammer martial art, the general characteristics of this martial art were very clear in the rumors, so he could recognize it at a glance. Then, as the giant spirit sect powerhouse was fighting fiercely with the Tong Tian demonic ape, the sky suddenly split open, and an even more powerful armored black dragon that had already begun to experience its first tribulation rushed out. Although it was a little rude to say this, compared to the Black Dragon King, Jieyu was really like a loach. Meanwhile, the Black Dragon King was fighting with a monk. Buddha's light shone all over his body, enveloping heaven and earth. It was like the pure land of ultimate bliss, an ancient Buddhist land. In the Buddha's light, the sky was filled with Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Arhats, and ditty-chanting Buddhist scriptures together. However, the Black Dragon King was really fierce, and the Buddha's light world was on the verge of collapse as if it would shatter at any time. At this moment, the battle between the giant spirit sect martial arts powerhouse and the Tong Tian demonic ape affected the Black Dragon King, causing the Black Dragon King's attack to pause. The monk immediately turned from defense to offense. He stretched out his palm and lifted heaven and earth with one palm, pulling the Black Dragon King into the pure land of ultimate bliss. When Lin Feng, Shoichi Daishin, Xianlin Taoist, and the others saw this scene, they all secretly cheered, "What a Buddhist kingdom in a palm!" This was one of the most powerful magical powers of Buddhism, the Buddhist kingdom in a palm. Throughout history, only Buddhist mighty figures who had mastered the 5 directions Rulai Sutra and had successfully gone through tribulations could use this peerless magical power. Although it was not as overbearing as the Vairocana palm, it still had its own mystery. In today's divine land, this magical power, like the Vairocana palm, had disappeared after the last war between the two realms. It was almost as if it had been lost. Although the Black Dragon King's physical strength was extremely strong, he was unable to break out of the Buddhist kingdom in a palm of the monk's pure land of ultimate bliss. Between heaven and earth, a monk could be seen holding a world in his hand, and in the world, a black dragon kept stirring heaven and earth. However, in order to continue trapping the Black Dragon King, the monk could not deal with other enemies. At this moment, a bright light suddenly flashed, immediately injuring the monk. The monk had no choice but to withdraw the Buddhist kingdom in a palm to protect himself first. When the Black Dragon King broke free, he immediately flew into a rage. On one hand, he began to chase after the monk, and on the other hand, he vented his anger on the giant spirit sect martial arts powerhouse. He directly clawed down. The giant spirit sect powerhouse raised his arms and used all his strength to resist this claw, but he was also scratched until his flesh and blood were dripping. When a Dao integration realm martial arts powerhouse bled, a drop of blood was like a small sun. It was so hot that it was difficult to get close, and it dried up all the moisture in the surroundings. The giant spirit sect powerhouse was scratched by the claw, and his flesh and blood flew everywhere. Suddenly, the surrounding world seemed to have fallen into a great furnace. Before he could react, the Tong Tian demonic ape brazenly pounced over and wrapped its arms around the giant spirit sect powerhouse, hugging him tightly. The demonic ape smiled ferociously and tightened its arms. A power that was not any weaker than that of the giant spirit sect powerhouse at his peak suddenly erupted. A soul-stirring sound came from all over the human powerhouse's body. This sound was not the ordinary sound of bones breaking. Instead, it was like the sound of heaven and earth collapsing and stars shattering. It was not ear-piercing. Instead, it was extremely low and shocking. The giant spirit sect powerhouse resisted with all his might. However, he was injured and had lost the upper hand. At this moment, he was powerless to fight against the demonic ape behind him. He could only let out an unwilling roar. The Dao Integration Realm powerhouse roared, and all the surrounding spirit chi was destroyed. The wind and clouds surged. However, he was one step behind, and he kept falling behind. No matter how hard he tried, he could not turn the situation around. He could only watch helplessly as his body was crushed by the primordial demonic ape step by step. However, at this moment, the entire world seemed to shake. The Black Dragon King, who was chasing after the monk, and the heaven-reaching demonic ape, who was about to win, were stunned. Then, their expressions changed, and they saw the surrounding world suddenly change. The heaven-reaching demonic ape immediately gave up on the giant spirit sect powerhouse and leaped up into the sky. Unfortunately, it was too late. The world was like a great furnace, completely locking him inside. The Black Dragon, who was even more powerful, suffered the same fate. The Black Dragon kept roaring and tried to break through the surrounding realms. However, it could only break its head and bleed. The scene in front of Lin Feng, Wang Lin, Shoichi Daishin, and Xianlin Taoist suddenly changed. The world in the light and shadow disappeared, leaving behind an extremely heavy cauldron. Looking inside from the mouth of the cauldron, one could see an armored black dragon and a heaven-reaching demonic ape struggling. They were being cooked by air waves that were like flames and floodwaters. Next to the cauldron stood a person with his palm on the cauldron. He was dressed in a black dragon robe and had a flat crown on his head. His facial features could not be seen clearly, but he exuded a majestic and powerful aura. It was obvious that the cauldron was cooking a great demon. Naturally, it was Xia Huang and Ding of Shenzhou. However, Lin Feng frowned slightly when he saw this scene. It was mainly because of Ding of Shenzhou. Xia Huang was injured, and his injuries were quite serious. Who caused it? It can't be Ji Huang Xinyuan. Lin Feng turned to look at Shoichi Daishin and Xianlin Taoist. He saw that their expressions were indifferent, and there was no change in their eyes. Ever since the death of Jua Huang Xianshang and the death of Taishu Taoist and Gautama Buddha, the strongest human expert in the Divine Land was not the successor of the human emperor. Instead, it was the strongest expert in the history of Taishu Temple after Taishu Taoist, Wen Qiang. For a long period of time, it would not be an exaggeration to call Wen Qiang the strongest expert in divine origin world. Killing Jua Huang Xianshang had severely damaged the Haotian mirror. After that, to open the path to the Dead Sea, the Taishu Taoist was forced to use the Haotian mirror again. As a result, after he and Gautama Buddha left, the Haotian mirror could not be used anymore. In the years that followed, it was Wen Qiang who shouldered the Divine Land and intimidated the demons of Infinite Wasteland. Although being invincible in one-on-one battles did not mean that he was invincible in everything, there were human experts who died in the war between the two worlds after that, and there were changes in the position of the human emperor. But overall, in that era, the Divine Land still had a slight advantage over Infinite Wasteland. However, for some reason, Wen Qiang seemed to have suddenly fallen out with his sect. In the end, he left White Cloud Mountain and cultivated alone. He only appeared during the war between the two worlds. This situation was finally broken when Ji Huang Xinyuan appeared out of nowhere. The balance of power between the two worlds was reversed. In the end, during the war between the two worlds, Ji Huang Xinyuan swept through the Divine Land and arrived at White Cloud Mountain. Wen Qiang traversed millions of miles to return to his sect. He brought along the Haotian mirror, which had recovered a long time ago but had not fully recovered, to stand guard at White Cloud Mountain and fight fiercely against Ji Huang Xinyuan. Although Wen Qiang paid the price with his life and the Haotian mirror grew weaker, in exchange Ji Huang Xinyuan was heavily injured. The injuries were so severe that Ji Huang Xinyuan had to temporarily abdicate and cultivate in seclusion. He only reappeared many years later, during the last days of the ancient era. However, it was also during this war between the two worlds that many bizarre things happened. Firstly, Wen Qiang's corpse was nowhere to be seen, and it was doubtful whether he was dead or alive. Some of the things that happened during the Middle Era also seem to prove this point. There were many secrets that were difficult to verify now. Secondly, when Wen Qiang and Ji Huang Xinyuan had exchanged pieces, Xia Huang died mysteriously and Ding of Shenzhou went missing. Lin Feng looked at Xia Huang's figure in the light in front of him, and his eyes narrowed slightly. If the historical records are correct, Xia Huang did not fight fiercely with Ji Huang Xinyuan, nor was there any record of him being injured when fighting with other demons. Why did he suddenly get injured? Why do I feel that his injuries are vaguely familiar? As the light and shadow flickered, the view seemed to come from the void, but also seemed to come from the divine prefecture cauldron. Emperor Xia was leading the divine prefecture cauldron in pursuit of a divine spiritual monkey, who was in the first tribulations. The monkey was using the innate divine ability of divine agility to flee. But in the end, Xia Huang still managed to block the divine agility monkey and was prepared to kill it. But just as Ding of Shenzhou trapped the divine agility monkey, a black light suddenly appeared and wrapped around Xia Huang. Chapter 1001. Although the scene was rather blurry, Lin Feng, Shoichi Daishin and the others could tell that the scene shown was most likely the battle between the two worlds where Xia Huang died. Looking at the environment back then, it was in Tianhuang mainland. In terms of time, the battle between Ji Huang Xinyuan and Wen Qiang had already ended. Wen Qiang had died and disappeared while Ji Huang Xinyuan had returned to Tianhuang mainland with severe injuries. The other experts of the human race had also recovered their lost land under the command of Xia Huang and even launched a counterattack against Tianhuang mainland. The battle between the two worlds was already nearing its end. Although the experts of the human race had launched a counterattack against the demon race world, it was merely a pursuit battle. The divine land had also suffered heavy losses and was unable to launch an actual attack against Tianhuang mainland. According to historical records, Xia Huang had died mysteriously during the pursuit battle that was nearing the end of the battle. The war had almost come to an end, but the Xia Emperor, one of the peak experts of the human race, had actually fallen. This truly left everyone dumbfounded, and it became a famous mystery of the primordial era that had yet to be solved. Because his corpse was nowhere to be seen, there was still some hope left for people back then. However, as time passed, they were ultimately disappointed again and again. Lin Feng looked at the light projection in front of him seriously. The light projection formed by Ding of Shenzhou was likely to reveal this ancient secret. For example, Lin Feng had never heard that Xia Huang was already severely injured at the end of the battle. At this moment, within the light, the Xia Emperor, who was preparing to use the divine god cauldron to suppress and kill the tribulation-level divine spirit monkey, was suddenly swept up by a ray of black light. In the depths of the black light, there was a white haze of light that was full of vitality. However, the black light itself was lifeless, indicating the deepest and most extreme true intent of death. As soon as he saw this black light, Lin Feng's eyes flashed with understanding. Shoichi Daishin and Xianlin Taoist, whose expressions did not change after witnessing Xia Huang's injury, shifted their gazes slightly, as though they were trying to verify the guesses they had for many years. They sighed in unison. If that's the case, it's a pity for Xia Huang. Amidst the intertwining black light of the true intents of life and death, a figure appeared. This was a middle-aged man with a handsome face. His sideburns were slightly stained with frost. The two diametrically opposed temperaments of generosity and kindness and coldness were perfectly unified on him. It was inconceivable, yet filled with a unique charm. What was even more noteworthy was that his eyes were pitch black. When he opened his eyes, there was nothing else in his eye sockets other than pure darkness. Although they had never met before, Lin Feng, Wang Lin, Shoichi Daishin, and Xianlin Taoist could naturally recognize this person. After Xia Huang, he was the successor of the human emperor, the capital emperor. However, the later generations were more used to calling him the king of the underworld. The high and mighty king of the underworld, who controlled reincarnation and determined the fate of life and death. Lin Feng saw this and shook his head slightly. The ruthless sovereign has always been regarded as the first human emperor to commit treason. I never expected that the king of the underworld was actually the first. During the reign of the human emperors, the succession of the throne was mostly due to the death of the previous human emperors in the war with the demon clan. Most human emperors did not have a good ending. The abdication of the human emperor was an exception. As for the last 3 generations of human emperors, it was a sad story. The king of the underworld was deposed and overthrown by the Taishu Temple and the ancient emperor in conjunction with other forces in the Divine Land. After the ancient emperor was severely injured in the war between the two worlds, he was killed by the ruthless sovereign. In the end, the ruthless sovereign was deposed and killed by the entire Divine Land, which ended the rule of the human emperors. Before this, no one would have thought that Xia Huang did not actually die in the hands of the demon clan. Instead, he was killed by the king of the underworld, who was also an expert of the human clan. In the light and shadow, the king of the underworld held Xia Huang back while the supreme agility monkey in Ding of Shenzhou took the opportunity to retaliate and restrain Ding of Shenzhou. Lin Feng only needed 2 glances to know that the king of the underworld must have been planning this for a long time. He had been hiding his strength and biding his time to hide it from everyone. Even if Xia Huang had not been injured, he would not have been a match for the king of the underworld. Now that Xia Huang was seriously injured and could not activate Ding of Shenzhou to assist him in battle, he was even less of a match for the king of the underworld. In the end, Xia Huang was killed by the king of the underworld. Ding of Shenzhou fled far away, and the supreme agility monkey that Ding of Shenzhou and Ding of Shenzhou were also killed by the king of the underworld. As the light and shadow changed, Ding of Shenzhou returned to the Sea of Stars. After the king of the underworld occupied the Sea of Stars, he tried to search for Ding of Shenzhou but ultimately failed to find Ding of Shenzhou. The uniqueness of the Sea of Stars made it unlike the Spirit Ocean and the Ocean Rising Ocean, which could be completely controlled by a single person and use the power of the entire world to suppress a single target. This allowed Ding of Shenzhou to escape the calamity. He hid in the depths of the Sea of Stars and slowly recuperated until today. The light and shadow ended there. However, Lin Feng and the others naturally knew what happened after Xia Huang's death. After the war between the two worlds, the king of the underworld, who had yet to reveal his true thoughts, appeared out of nowhere. He ascended to the position of supremacy and ruled over the world, becoming the new human emperor of the generation. In reality, there were many suspicious points about Xia Huang's death. As the king of the underworld ascended to the throne, his reputation gradually deteriorated. Later generations' speculations about whether the king of the underworld was related to Xia Huang's death had never stopped. However, apart from the king of the underworld himself, no one knew the truth. Therefore, there was no way to verify it. Today, this mystery that had been hanging for a long time had finally been solved. However, Lin Feng's eyes were slightly closed and light flickered in his eyes. It's true that Xia Huang died in the hands of the king of the underworld, but his previous injuries were not caused by the king of the underworld. In the end, Xia Huang was actually taken advantage of by the king of the underworld, who had been watching in the dark when he was heavily injured. In that case, who was the one who injured him? As he pondered, Lin Feng looked at Shoichi Daishin and Xianlin Taoist. He saw that both of them had regained their composure. Both of them had only had suspicions about the truth behind Xia Huang's death. It was only today that they had verified their suspicions. However, they did not seem surprised that Xia Huang had been injured. It was obvious that they knew about it. Both of them were obviously hostile towards the king of the underworld. They were not interested in him, but they felt sorry for Xia Huang. This also matched the information that Lin Feng had obtained from Cangtian Daojian. Among the ancient emperors, Xia Huang had the most harmonious relationship with the Taishu Temple. Xia Huang's daughter's Dao partner was a direct descendant of the Taishu Temple. However, what happened next made Lin Feng feel very excited. Brontosaurus's clone was not as convenient as the divine god of war's clone when it came to communicating with the artifact, even if the Brontosaurus's clone had a higher cultivation base. After the light disappeared, Lin Feng's divine god of war and Shoichi Daishin sent their energy into Ding of Shenzhou at the same time. Logically speaking, his divine god of war's energy was not as strong as Shoichi Daishin's. However, the result was that Ding of Shenzhou was not friendly to his energy. Instead, it was faintly repelling Shoichi Daishin. Shoichi Daishin's expression was calm, as if he was not surprised. He sighed in his heart. If he used the Taishu Sage Hall and combined his strength with his Dharma treasure, he might be able to retrieve the Divine Prefecture Cauldron after a long time. After all, while the Divine Prefecture Cauldron was repelling him, it was not that strong. There was still room for negotiation. However, Lin Feng's Brontosaurus clone and the Divine God of War's clone were right in front of him. The yin and yang life and death formation was slowly rotating in the void above his head. Naturally, they could not watch him subdue Ding of Shenzhou. However, Shoichi Daishin and the others came in through a disposable artifact. The number of people who could enter and their cultivation base were limited. Therefore, Taoist Master Tai and the others could not come to help. Although the Haotian mirror could shine into the sea of stars, on the one hand, it was separated by the power of boundaries. On the other hand, it was now fighting with Lin Feng in the sea of stars. The situation was not under the control of the Taishu Temple. In particular, Lin Feng's gate of the Sea of Stars was far away. If the situation was really necessary, his deity could come to the Sea of Stars at any time. Therefore, even though Shoichi Daishin had a tough character, he had to give up the idea of using force. In this way, although his strength was much stronger than Lin Feng's Divine God of War's clone, he did not have the slightest advantage. In particular, Shoichi Daishin did not dare to go all out. Lin Feng's Brontosaurus clone was now staring at him like a tiger watching its prey. The little Kelowna world that Ding of Shenzhou had turned into was now motionless under the wrestling between Shoichi Daishin and Lin Feng. It was as heavy as the vast land of the Divine Land. However, rays of light kept flashing on the surface of the little Kelowna world, dazzling in the dark void of the Sea of Stars. Lin Feng and Shoichi Daishin were wrestling. The two of them did not focus all their attention on each other. While they were competing, they were also paying attention to the vast, desolate, ancient starry Sea of Stars, in case a group of great demons suddenly appeared and surrounded them. Wang Lin's great demon clone and Xianlin Taoist stood at the side, watching each other. At the same time, they were also keeping watch for their elders, paying attention to the surrounding movements. The great sage and the other great demons had just retreated, but that did not mean that they would not regroup and make a comeback. Lin Feng's expression suddenly changed slightly. His mind was connected to the gate of the Sea of Stars. He felt that his gate of the Sea of Stars was vibrating in an unusual manner. It was clearly different from usual. Soon, the entire Sea of Stars began to tremble slightly. In the distance, specks of starlight gradually connected, and the originally dark void of the universe became extremely dazzling. Shoichi Daishin and the others naturally noticed the changes in the desolate ancient starry sea. Someone wants to open the star tomb. Shoichi Daishin and Xianlin Taoist looked at each other. Although they had not personally witnessed the scene of the ancient human race experts occupying the Sea of Stars to open the star tomb, this did not stop them from identifying what was happening in front of them based on the records of their sections. Lin Feng's eyes narrowed slightly. 1, 2, 3, 2. For example, when my gate of stars was sealed, there was another gate of stars. This time, there are 4 gates of stars working together. He stared at the dazzling light in the distance and thought to himself, 4 gates of stars? In other words, this is the sign of the opening of the star tomb? Frankly speaking, this change was somewhat out of Lin Feng's expectations. Because in his expectations, the great demons should have tried to seize the gate of stars in his hands, and thus gather 4 gates. Other than him, the other 4 gates were in the hands of the Enchantress, Golden Rock Great Sage, the Great Sage, and the Dragon Race. Today, when Tenryu Gen had successfully gone through the intermediate trial, the possibility of the other 3 great demons and the Dragon Race working together to open the star tomb was too low. Then, is it the 6th gate of the Sea of Stars? Lin Feng frowned. Or does the Enchantress and the others have other ideas? Chapter 1002. Lin Feng looked at the dazzling starry sky in the distance and grinned. The Enchantress, the Golden Rock Great Sage, and the Great Sage, are they going to help Taishu Temple and me lure Tenryu Gen out of the Xian Sea? The Great Sage and the others might not know why Taishu Temple could enter the Xian Sea, and they might not know if other experts from Taishu Temple would come to help Shoichi Daishin, but at least Shoichi Daishin and Taishu Temple had appeared in front of them. And Lin Feng definitely had a Star Sea gate. If there were no accidents, Lin Feng's main body could enter the Xian Sea at any time. Even if there were disputes between the two sides, if Tenryu Gen left the Xian Sea and entered the Xian Sea before he recovered to his peak, Lin Feng and Taishu Temple would most likely join forces to deal with this unparalleled demon who had successfully gone through the Middle Tribulation. Of course, even if Lin Feng and Taishu Temple succeeded in killing Tenryu Gen, they would have to pay a huge price. This was undoubtedly something that the Enchantress and the other great demons would love to see. If Tenryu Gen didn't enter the Xian Sea, then opening the Star Graveyard would be beneficial to them. The large number of star remains in the Star Graveyard was undoubtedly a precious treasure for the demon race, and it would greatly increase their strength. Lin Feng and Shoichi Daishin looked at each other. They both knew what was going on, but they remained silent and didn't say anything. Although Ding of Shenzhou had once again turned into a little Kelowna world, the two sides were still wrestling. The Star Graveyard was far from where they were, but it wasn't out of reach for Lin Feng and Shoichi Daishin. The opening of the Star Graveyard wasn't something that could be accomplished overnight, and it was just a warm-up. To them, taking down Ding of Shenzhou before rushing to the Star Tomb was a good choice. After all, in order to open the Star Tomb, 4 Star Ocean gates were needed. The star remains in the Star Tomb were precious treasures to the monster race, but they were also useful to human cultivators. Taking down Ding of Shenzhou could also enhance his own strength. Although this treasure was superior to the other treasures in terms of its ability to refine pills and medicines, it could not hide the fact that it was still a creation-grade magic treasure. The power it contained was equally earth-shattering. Xianlin Taoist and Wang Lin's great devil avatar stared at each other. Wang Lin's expression was incomparably calm. Although they hadn't really fought, he could vaguely feel that the great devil avatar alone was probably not a match for Xianlin Taoist, especially when the great devil avatar had suffered some damage in the previous battle with the six-horned great sage. His odds of winning were even slimmer. Although Tsangtian Dao Jian was by his side, Xianlin Taoist must also have a magic treasure with him. Moreover, it was a magic treasure that perfectly matched the Taoist techniques of his Taishu Temple and could play a better role. However, Wang Lin wasn't worried. He could also use Lin Feng's Two Realms Void technique. If there was a need, he could exchange his real body and the mysterious sky sealing flag. Even though his attainments are not as profound as his master Lin Feng's, and it may not be convenient to use the two-world void technique separated by the Sea of Stars and the Great Thousand Worlds, but taking 10,000 steps back, the Gate of Stars is on the other side. If it weren't for the fact that he didn't want to weaken the remaining forces in the Divine Land, Wang Lin's real body would have already charged into the Star Ocean with the mysterious sky sealing flag. Compared to him, he should be more worried about Xianlin Taoist. The difference between having support and not having support was most obvious when the two sides were basically evenly matched. In reality, Xianlin Taoist was indeed in a bad mood. However, it wasn't because of Wang Lin in front of him, nor was it because Xianmen Tianzong could descend upon the desolate ancient Star Ocean at any time. What concerned Xianlin Taoist was that Shi Tianhao had entered Ding of Shenzhou at Lin Feng's behest before the two sides began to wrestle. Previously, within Ding of Shenzhou, the strongest expert in Xianmen Tianzong had been Zhu Yi's Hao Yang clone, which had a good foundation. Now that Zhu Yi had completely refined it, its strength had become even more powerful, far beyond that of ordinary void return cultivators. However, the strongest expert from Taishu Temple who had entered Ding of Shenzhou was Kai Fengzhou, a member of the Grand Supreme Elders Association and a Dao Integration Realm expert. However, now that Shi Tianhao had also entered, although Xianlin Taoist still had confidence in Kai Fengzhou, he had to admit that his ability to control the situation had plummeted, and he no longer had enough confidence in success. Shoichi Daishin was wrestling with Lin Feng's Brontosaurus clone and God of War clone for some special reasons. Under such circumstances, if Kai Fengzhou and the others could first contact the primordial spirit of Ding of Shenzhou from the inside and make progress, then they could cooperate from the inside and the outside to gain the upper hand in the battle for Ding of Shenzhou, and even expand their advantage into victory. On the contrary, the same situation was happening on Xianmen Tianzong's side. Under the influence of Lin Feng and Shoichi Daishin, the light outside the little Kelowna world became more and more dazzling, and the connection between them and Ding of Shenzhou became more and more intimate. The realm outside the little Kelowna world suddenly shook, and some light and shadow images emerged from it. Lin Feng and Shoichi Daishin's eyes flickered at the same time. The images before them were not light and shadow images of the past, but what was happening in Ding of Shenzhou right now. Many figures appeared in one of the light and shadow images. All of them were dressed in white robes with patterns of white clouds embroidered on their lapels. This was the standard uniform of Taishu Temple. One of them was thin and had pale skin. He had an aquiline nose and thin lips. His expression was cold and indifferent, and there was a slight sign of weakness on his face. He was saying something. This person was Yang Zhao. Previously, he was drawn into the void crack, and it was not easy for him to escape. His luck was not bad, and he soon met his fellow disciples again. There were many Taishu Temple cultivators in front of him, and they seemed to be led by 3 people. The person in the middle had the highest level of cultivation. She was a late-stage Yuanian cultivator who had achieved the Dharma form of heaven and earth. She was a woman, and she looked calm. Silently, she was listening to Yang Zhao's words. This woman looked to be in her 20s. The light in her eyes was calm and quiet. Strictly speaking, her appearance was not outstanding. At most, she was above average. She could not be compared to female cultivators of Taishu Temple like Yan Mingyue and Bai Shiqian. However, her temperament was elegant, and it left a deep impression on others. But there was a hint of indifference in her calm expression. On the right side of this woman stood a handsome young man. He was tall and slender. He was one of the outstanding young disciples of Taishu Temple who had participated in the Kunlun Mountain Dharma assembly with Lin Daohan and Yan Mingyue in the past. He was Qin Xingyu. Similar to Zhou Yunzong, who had the burning yang body, Qin Xingyu's absolute yin body also had many dangers during the process of cultivation. Compared to Zhou Yunzong, who had to face the yin fire tribulation right after he reached core formation, Qin Xingyu's core formation was slightly more stable. But the next hurdle he had to face was even more dangerous. When a person with the absolute yin body cultivated, after he reached core formation, he had to face the yin fire tribulation in the early stage of golden elixir. When he successfully reached the middle stage of golden elixir, he would immediately face the yin wind tribulation. In other words, after Qin Xingyu reached core formation, if he wanted to continue to advance, he had to face the wind tribulation and the fire tribulation. If he succeeded, he would reach the late stage of golden elixir, which was perfect and without leaks. If he failed, he would directly die. For Qin Xingyu, who had the absolute yin body, both of these hurdles were dangerous. Facing the tribulation consecutively was even more difficult. Just like how Zhou Yunzong had stagnated in the late stage of foundation building for a long time, Qin Xingyu had also endured for a long time in the early stage of golden elixir. Finally, under the protection of his master, he was able to succeed by a narrow margin. Soon after, he faced the void thunder tribulation. The predicament he faced was the same as Zhou Yunzong's. The difficulty was higher than that of other cultivators. However, this person was indeed worthy of being a genius that Taishu Temple focused on cultivating. Now, he had successfully reached nascent soul. Of course, on the path of cultivation, he would still face more risks and difficulties than other cultivators. Together with Zhou Yunzong, they could be said to be a pair of brothers in hardship. Brother 1 was killed by Tang Jun. After that, Brother Shan, Sister Zhao, and Xianmen Tianzong were all devoured by the void crack. Yang Zhao told them what happened. At that time, Qin Xingyu and the others had already arrived at the scene. They were just a little slower, so they knew what happened after that. Sister Mu, please tell us what we should do next. After Yang Zhao finished speaking, he cupped his hands in salute and did not say another word. Chen Xingyu looked at Sister Mu and said silently, "Senior sister, Sister Zhao and Brother Shan are missing. Let's look for them first, then meet up with Marshal Granduncle Kai and decide what to do next." Sister Mu's name was Mu Xian. Among the younger disciples of Taishu Temple who entered the desolate ancient Sea of Stars, she had the highest cultivation base. She said calmly, "Let's look for people first. We should look for junior brother Shan and sister Zhao, and also Xianmen Tianzong." To the left of Mu Xian, the person standing side by side with her and Chen Xingyu was a tall young man. Like Chen Xingyu, he was also at the early nascent soul stage. However, unlike the gentle and refined Chen Xingyu, his temperament was much more unyielding, and he revealed an extremely strong aggressive nature. The young man's chiseled face showed dissatisfaction. He stared at Yang Zhao and said, "You have lost all the people of our temple." Yang Zhao faced him and bowed. He did not refute. It was not only because the young man's cultivation base was higher than his, and his magical power was even higher than Shan Xiang, who was at the middle Yuanying stage. It was also because this young man, Guoqiaoyang, was a radical like him. He was also the most powerful leader among the younger generation of the radical faction. Although the internal factions of Taishu Temple had unified their thinking on some matters, the differences between the factions still existed. The cultivation and competition of successors were everywhere. Since Pangjia was suppressed and Shi Tianyi was beheaded, there were almost no radical descendants of the same generation who could touch Lin Daohan's position. Even if it was just a hope to fight against Lin Daohan, there were almost no radical descendants. But among the next generation of disciples, there was someone who could stand up to Chen Xingyu. It was the tall young man who was standing beside Mu Xian and Chen Xingyu. In front of Guoqiaoyang, there wasn't a single lie in Yang Zhao's words. Everything that he had said was true to the truth. Guoqiaoyang looked at Yang Zhao and shook his head. "You and Brother Wan don't like Xianmen Tianzong. That's nothing. I don't like them either. But what's the deal with biting the hand that fed them and stabbing them in the back? It's not honorable if you succeed. Now, you've lost the people and the formation." Chapter 1003. Guoqiaoyang looked at Yang Zhao expressionlessly and said in a low voice, "If you think that it's a humiliation to be helped by the disciples of Xianmen Tianzong, then you can choose not to accept their help. You said that you didn't know about it beforehand and only found out that they were from Xianmen Tianzong after entering their formation. That's fine too. You could just turn around and leave their formation. Why did you still follow them? If you feel that it's unbearable and you don't want to be helped by them, then just say it in person and fight them. Although it's also a betrayal, at least you'll be able to protect some of our pride. What's with the sneak attack after that? Do you also think that you're no match for them in a head-on fight? Yang Zhao, you and Wan Zhengluan have been learning Dao in by Yun Mountain for so many years. Where have you been learning?" Guoqiaoyang's expression was cold. However, in front of Chen Xingyu and the others, he still left some face for Yang Zhao, who was also a radical disciple. He communicated with Yang Zhao through telepathy using his mana, but his words were not polite. After a moment of silence, Yang Zhao answered softly, "Brother Guo, although I don't want to admit it, Brother Wan and I are indeed no match for them. Even Brother Shan, who is in the middle stage of Yuanying, is no match for Tang Jun of Xianmen Tianzong." Guoqiaoyang's expression softened and he said slowly, "You mean, you also agree with what Tang Jun said, that the disciples of Xianmen Tianzong are invincible in the same realm, even if they're up against us?" Yang Zhao's face turned even paler when he heard Meng Qi's words. However, he still nodded slightly. "Brother Guo, you and senior brother Chen are both rare geniuses. You are at the early stage of Yuanying, but your supernatural power is already stronger than Brother Shan, who is at the middle stage of Yuanying. You can even fight Sister Mu, who is at the late stage of Yuanying. Even in this temple, there are very few geniuses like you. But I really can't win against Xianmen Tianzong's Tang Jun, who is also at the late stage of the Golden Elixir." Guoqiaoyang's expression softened, and his stiff face even showed a hint of a smile. "You can't use the standard of the Divine Land to measure it. This sounds so familiar. Once upon a time, isn't that what others used to praise us?" The smile on Guoqiaoyang's face gradually disappeared, and he became expressionless again. It's a pity that Dao Yuding and Lin Tong didn't come to the desolate ancient star ocean. Among Xianmen Tianzong's second-generation direct disciples, there were two who had reached the nascent soul stage. They were Dao Yuding, who was under Wang Lin, and little Lin Tong, who was under Xiao Yan. The news had already spread to the world. Yang Zhao looked at Guo Chaoyang and slowly said, "Brother Guo, Tang Jun, Zhou Yunsong, and Han Yang are equally famous. They are known as the three strongest among Xianmen Tianzong's second-generation direct disciples in the same realm. Even Dao Yuding and Lin Tong were not as strong as them when they were at the late stage of the golden elixir." As he said this, he glanced at Qin Xingyu, who was next to him. Although Yang Zhao admired Guo Chaoyang's strength and talent, Guo Chaoyang and Qin Xingyu had fought many times in the internal competitions of the Taishu Temple over the years, and they were basically tied. Because Qin Xingyu had to go through all kinds of difficulties and obstacles in the process of cultivating the absolute Yin body, Guo Chaoyang, who had joined the sect later than him, had a more dazzling cultivation speed. He had already closed the gap between the two of them. If nothing unexpected happened, he might even advance to the middle stage of the Yuanying realm earlier. But when they were at the same cultivation realm, the strength of the two had always been about the same. In the past, during the Kunlun Mountain Dharma Assembly, Qin Xingyu had fought with Zhou Yunsong. Although during the Golden Elixir period, Qin Xingyu's cultivation was suppressed by Xianmen Tianzong's Hongfa Hall to the late stage of the Foundation establishment realm like Zhou Yunsong, him at that time, because of his vision and experience, was definitely stronger than when he was in the late stage of the Foundation establishment realm. But the result of the fight was that Qin Xingyu was still defeated. Previously in the Little Kelowna world, although Zhou Yunsong did not directly fight, after seeing the strength of Tang Jun, who was equally famous, Yang Zhao felt a chill in his heart. Although it was one thing that the other party had many magic treasures, even if they only fought with their own magic power, Yang Zhao did not think that Shan Xiang, who was in the middle stage of the Yuanying realm, would be able to win. If Tang Jun was like this, then Zhou Yunsong and Han Yang, who were equally famous, were naturally not ordinary people. Guo Chaoyang said calmly, "I understand what you mean, but this will not shake the belief in my heart. In my heart, this temple is the strongest existence in the Divine Land, and even the entire Tianyuan world. As disciples of the Taishu realm, since we enjoy the glory of the sect, we should defend the dignity of the sect. When someone tries to challenge the glory of the temple, we, the disciples of the Taishu realm, have to stand up. This is our responsibility and our glory. Even if I lose personally, the Taishu temple cannot and will not lose." Guo Chaoyang stretched out his hands and spread his palms in front of him. He stared at the lines on his palms. "I have never been a pedantic person. Our goal of dominating the heavens is not something that can be paved with moral essays. There are some methods that should be used. Naturally, we will use them. But all of this has a precondition. The way of the king is the right way, and the way of deceit is supplementary. The reason why our temple can dominate the heavens is first because we are strong enough. Without this as a foundation, no matter how many methods you use, it will only be a temporary achievement." Guo Chaoyang stared at Yang Zhao. "The elders in the temple have to consider the big picture and many other things. We don't know what they plan, but when we, the younger generation, face the younger generation of Xianmen Tianzong, the first thing we have to think about is defeating them, then scheming against them. Over the years, great waves have washed away the sand, but our temple has always stood tall. It has not fallen in the past, and it has not fallen now. We must ensure that our sect will not fall in the future. When you have doubts in your heart, how can you work hard?" Yang Zhao was silent for a moment before he slowly said, "Brother Guo, please reconsider. To be disrespectful to Sister Mu, although she is already in the late Yuanying stage, everyone knows that you and senior brother Qin are more talented and have more potential than her. If you and senior brother Qin lose, our last hope will also be gone." Guo Chaoyang's expression was calm. He didn't mind Yang Zhao's words. He only said indifferently, "Yang Zhao, you still don't understand, but I don't expect you to think the same way as me. However, you need to pay attention to one thing. If we lose confidence and perseverance, even if we can temporarily gain the upper hand with tricks, we will only go downhill. At that time, not only will we lose the present, but we will also lose the future. On the other hand, even if I lose, Qin Xingyu also loses, and our generation loses, our younger generation, our disciples, and our grand-disciples will eventually catch up. Although he had always admired Guo Qiaoyang, Yang Zhao was never a person who followed blindly. He said in a deep voice, "If we can completely cut off the other party, we won't lose the present, and we won't lose the future. If we lose, we will only help the opponent's momentum. Even if it is as you said, Brother Guo, we may not win the future." Guo Qiaoyang glanced at him, and there was obvious disappointment in his eyes. "Yang Zhao, you still don't understand. We are different from Qin Xingyu and the others. In order for our temple to rule the world, I am not afraid to completely destroy all obstacles on this path, but that is only a means. Yang Zhao, what is important is your heart. Your faith has been shaken, and your state of mind is too weak. If you can't get rid of this mentality of guarding day and night, you will find that one Xianmen Tianzong, one Tang Jun, one Zhou Yunsong, one Han Yang will keep popping up in front of you, and you will never be able to destroy them all. And you will become weaker and weaker, until one day you are completely trampled on by others, and you will never be able to rise again." Guo Qiaoyang said coldly, "Recently, not only has your cultivation stagnated, but because of the unstable state of mind, your supernatural power and magic power are faintly showing signs of degeneration. Haven't you noticed it yourself?" Yang Zhao was silent, and his face was getting paler. Guo Qiaoyang reached out and patted his shoulder. "Grandmaster and the others have to look at the big picture. We will just follow their orders, and what we need to do now is to defend the glory of our temple. Let's go together and find Brother Shan and Sister Zhao. If we meet Xianmen Tianzong's people, I will take the initiative to challenge them." Guo Xiaoyang's expression was cold and hard. Even if Junior Brother Wan is in the wrong, as long as he is a disciple of this monastery and has not been expelled from the monastery, it should be dealt with by this monastery. If the celestial sect of Xianmen kills him, they must pay the price. It doesn't matter if Lin Tong and Dao Yuding didn't enter the Sea of Stars, but there are still Yu Hongyan, Li Yuanfang, and Luo Qingwu, right? Yang Zhao was shocked. "Brother Guo," Guo Qiaoyang looked at him calmly. "Tang Jun of Xianmen Tianzong dared to challenge Brother Shan of Middle Yuanning Realm in the late Golden Elixir, but I, Early Yuanning Realm in the Early Yuanning Realm, don't dare? To be honest, I don't have enough confidence. But winning or losing is another matter. At least I want to fight him face to face." Lowering his eyelids, Yang Zhao did not say a word. He knew that Guo Qiaoyang was trying to get back at them for their previous actions. Winning or losing is another matter, but cultivators of Taishu Temple never lack courage and pride. The strong don't need to prove anything to the weak. But when the strong fight against the strong, they can use all kinds of tricks, but they can't show weakness in their mentality. Mu Xian and Qin Xingyu looked at Guo Qiaoyang and Yang Zhao, who were facing each other in silence. They could feel the transcendence energy transmission between the two, but they didn't try to find out or interrupt. Silently, they just waited. Among the crowd, Ding Runfeng, who had a conflict with Yu Hongyan and others with Bai Shiqian in West Hill City in the past, and Fan Xiefeng, who had an outstanding performance in the Kunlun Mountain Dharma Assembly, stood silently. But the way they looked at Yang Zhao was very complicated. After a while, Guo Qiaoyang turned to look at Mu Xian. "Sister Mu, let's go." Mu Xian's expression was indifferent. She nodded nonchalantly. The group of descendants of Taishu Temple continued their journey, traversing the interior of Little Kelowna World. After walking for a while, Qin Xingyu, Guo Qiaoyang, and Mu Xian's expressions changed slightly. They looked into the distance and saw a few figures moving. They were all dressed in purple. They were the people of Xianmen Tianzong. They were Yang Tai, Lu Xiafeng, Li Xingfei, and Zhou Yunsong. Yang Tai and the rest were slightly stunned when they saw Qin Xingyu and others. Then, their gazes fell on Yang Zhao. The four of them frowned. Chapter 1004. When they saw each other, the people from Taishu Temple and the disciples of Xianmen Tianzong were slightly stunned. Almost immediately, Zhou Yunsong and Qin Xingyu's eyes met. One was cold and murderous, while the other was gentle and indifferent. Yang Tai, Lu Xiaofeng, and Li Xingfei also glanced at the people from Taishu Temple. After a brief pause on Qin Xingyu, Guo Chaoyang, and Mu Xian, everyone's eyes fell on Yang Zhao. When they were trapped in the turbulent flow of spiritual qi, Yang Tai and the others were still aware of what was happening in the outside world. Although Yang Zhao did not attack together with Wan Zhengluan, he first stopped Zhao Mingxiu, and then stopped Tang Jun from seeking revenge on Wan Zhengluan. Yang Tai and the others witnessed everything that happened. Yang Zhao's expression did not change. He still looked indifferent. Mu Xian and Guo Chaoyang were expressionless. They did not say anything. Chen Xingyu retracted his gaze from Zhou Yunsong and looked at Yang Tai and the others. He cupped his hands and said, "Brother Yang told us about what happened before. First of all, we thank you for helping Brother Shan, Brother Yang, Sister Zhao, and Brother Wan." Yang Tai said calmly, "Friend Qin, you're being too polite." Compared to Tang Jun and the others, he was calmer and gentler. But that did not mean he was a simple-minded person. On the contrary, as a disciple of Zhu Yi, he was the same as Zhu Yi. He repaid kindness with kindness, and repaid enmity with kindness. Zhou Yunsong stared at Qin Xingyu, Yang Zhao, and the others. His eyes were even colder. Lu Xiaofeng glanced at Qin Xingyu and said calmly, "Friend Qin, don't be in a hurry to thank us. It seems that some people in your sect are not grateful. We saved them, but saved them from trouble and enmity." Yang Zhao was about to speak, but Guo Chaoyang raised his hand to stop him. Yang Zhao immediately shut his mouth. Guo Chaoyang's eyes swept across Yang Tai, Lu Xiaofeng, and the others. "Indeed, we should be grateful. But what happened after that is indeed enmity. It doesn't matter if Brother Wan did something wrong. Our Taishu Temple has its own rules to punish him." A smile gradually appeared on Guo Chaoyang's cold and stiff face, but there was not the slightest hint of a smile in his eyes. "As long as Junior Marshal Brother Wan is a disciple of our monastery and hasn't been expelled from the monastery, he should be punished by our monastery. You killed him, and this is a grudge." Li Xingfei said calmly, "Unfortunately, I don't see where your Taishu Temple's rules are. If you really have them, why is this Yang Zhao still standing here?" Yang Tai and Guo Chaoyang stared at each other. An upright person must first correct himself. Otherwise, your words are not convincing at all. Lu Xiaofeng looked at Guo Chaoyang, shook his head, and said, "You just said, it doesn't matter if Wan Jingluan did something wrong. Is there a need to debate whether he did something wrong or not? Or, does your excellency have the same opinion as that Shan Xiang fellow? You think that Wan Jingluan wanted to help us. Who would have thought that his good intentions turned out to be bad? Everything was just an accident?" He sneered. "Do you think everyone here is blind?" Qin Xingyu frowned. Before he could say anything, Mu Xian, who had been silent all this time, suddenly said, "If Brother Wan was not dead, there would still be a need for us to continue talking here. Now that Brother Wan is dead, there is no point in talking anymore." Lu Xiaofeng raised his eyebrows. "You dare to do it, but you don't dare to admit it?" Silently, Mu Xian said, "Brother Wan has died in your hands. It doesn't matter whether you admit it or not. Both our sects are here for the sake of Ding of Shenzhou. There will definitely be a battle. Since we've met in advance, let's just start." Chen Xingyu frowned slightly and looked at Mu Xian. Mu Xian turned to look at him expressionlessly. Fan Xiefeng tugged at Qin Xingyu without batting an eyelid. He used his transcendence energy to transmit his voice to him. "Sister Mu has been holding her breath." Qin Xingyu sighed. He understood the meaning behind Fan Xiefeng's words. Although Mu Xian was already at the later stage of yuanying, she was actually not that old. Her master was the former Empyrean wayfarer of Taishu Temple, Pangjia, who had been suppressed by Taishu demons suppressing steel. When Pangjia was still young and his cultivation was still low, he coincidentally brought back a young girl, Mu Xian. As a result, Mu Xian became Pangjia's disciple. It was rare for Pangjia to accept a disciple at such a young age in the entire Taishu Temple. those in Taishu Temple who were familiar with this pair of master and disciple sighed in their hearts. After Mu Xian came of age, her feelings for Pang Jie had already surpassed that of a master and disciple relationship. After Pang Jie had been suppressed by Taishu demon suppressing steel, Mu Xian had maintained a strange silence and did not react much. However, her cultivation of the supreme Wang Qing Dao had progressed at a tremendous pace, advancing by leaps and bounds. In the eyes of the people in Taishu Temple, not only did they not feel happy, but they were also filled with worry. The supreme Wang Qing Dao, one of the two arts of Taishu and void, did not pursue emotionlessness, but to forget about emotions. Its core lay in the supreme Wang Qing Dao, seeming to have feelings but also being emotionless. The deeper one's feelings were, the greater the rewards one would gain after forgetting. The taboo was not about having feelings in one's heart, but about having emotions that were tangled and entangled. If one were to sink too deep, the consequences would be unthinkable. However, if one could grasp the essence of emotionlessness giving birth to emotions, obtaining emotions and forgetting about them, the speed of one's cultivation and the power of one's supernatural powers would be astonishing. At the very least, in terms of cultivation speed, it was much faster than the void yin-yang Dao, one of the two arts of Taishu and void. After Pang Jie had been suppressed, Mu Xian was not as emotionless and unresponsive as she appeared to be. On the contrary, she had completely released her feelings for Pang Jie, no longer suppressing them. However, there was a problem. Just like how the moon overflowed when it was full, it would decline when it was at its peak. If she had been immersed in this feeling and was unable to get out, then the result of reaching the top of the mountain with no way out would be to directly fall to the bottom of the valley. This kind of problem in the state of mind was not something that a cultivator could fully control on their own. They needed to break through the knot in their heart and also needed external opportunities. Especially under the cold appearance of Mu Xian, she had cultivated the Taishang Wang Qing Dao into the Dao of absolute emotion. While her cultivation realm was advancing by leaps and bounds, it was even more difficult to break through the true meaning of Taishang Wang Qing. It was not enough to rely on herself. To break through the knot in her heart, the key was still on Pang Jie. However, it was not about whether Pang Jie could come back from the Taishu demon suppressing steel, but it was on Xianmen Tianzong, who had tortured Pang Jie. Mu Xian naturally did not have any thoughts about Lin Feng, but this knot in her heart could be completely transferred to the disciples and disciples of Lin Feng. If she could break through this tribulation, Mu Xian might even be able to directly prove her primordial spirit. However, if it was delayed for a long time and exceeded a certain limit, it would gradually turn from prosperity to decline, and the consequences would be extremely dangerous. Countless seniors in the Taishu Temple who had cultivated the Taishang Wang Qing Dao had already set an example for Mu Xian. Of the two techniques of Taishang and void, the void yin and yang Dao was relatively stable. It was not easy to cultivate normally, and the progress was slow, but there were not too many hidden dangers. As for the Taishang Wang Qing Dao, it was easy to cultivate normally, and the progress was faster. If one could break through the obstacle in it, one's cultivation could advance by leaps and bounds. However, if one could not break through the knot of love, then the consequences would be unpredictable. The obstacle of love was not limited to the love between men and women. In addition to love, family, friendship, and even compassion for all living beings in the world, and various other emotions could become help in the cultivation of the Taishang Wang Qing Dao. At the same time, they could also become obstacles. Although she was a disciple of Pang Jie, Mu Xian, who had a cold temperament before, had an indifferent attitude towards the ideas of conservatives and radicals. Her position was inclined to be neutral. Even now, she still did not walk into the radicals' position like her master Pang Jie. However, this did not affect her hostility towards Xianmen Tianzong. This was because of emotional factors, and also because of her own path of cultivation. If it was only the former, Chen Xingyu would still have the heart to persuade her, but since it was related to the latter, he could only keep his mouth shut. Guo Qiaoyang, Ding Runfeng, Yang Zhao, and the others were not surprised by Mu Xian's reaction. Guo Qiaoyang looked at Yang Tai and the others and said calmly, If you can contact your fellow disciples, you'd better hurry up and do so. Yang Tai's gaze swept across Mu Xian, Guo Chaoyang and Chen Xingyu, and he said indifferently, late Yuanying, early Yuanying, very high cultivation, but so what? Although he was still young, and with his late golden elixir cultivation, Yang Tai was facing the young generation of Taishu Temple's cultivators, his expression was calm. He stood where he was, faintly exuding the aura of a master. Wan Jingluan only has himself to blame. You can't tell right from wrong. If you want to fight, then let's fight. Xianmen Tianzong's disciple, have I ever been afraid of anyone? Yang Tai cupped his hands and said, Xianmen Tianzong's disciple, Yang Tai, please enlighten me. Among the Taishu Temple's disciples in front of him, besides Chen Xingyu, Mu Xian, and Guo Chaoyang, Ding Runfeng, Fan Xiefeng, and the others were also in the early Yuanying cultivation. Other than them, Taishu Temple still had Yuanying cultivators here. There were only 4 people in Yang Tai's group, and all of them were in the golden elixir period. But when facing Chen Xingyu and the others, their aura did not weaken at all. Although Lu Xiaofeng and Li Xingfei were still in the middle golden elixir realm, their expressions were calm and composed. They cupped their hands together. Xianmen Tianzong's disciple, Lu Xiaofeng, please enlighten me. Xianmen Tianzong's disciple, Li Xingfei, please enlighten me. Zhou Yunsong, who was standing to the side, was surrounded by a faint black smoke. He looked extremely domineering and fierce, and his aura was even stronger than Yang Tai's. Although most of the time he stayed in Yujing Mountain to cultivate in seclusion and did not go out easily, Zhou Yunsong's name was still faintly known as the top second-generation true teaching disciple of Xianmen Tianzong. His fierce name was known to the whole world. He rarely went out and fought with others, but his subordinates did not leave anyone alive. He did not act rashly, and when he did, he showed no mercy. Ever since they met, even though Zhou Yunsong had not said a word, but the disciple of the celestial sect of wonders that the people of the Taishu Temple cared about the most was still this silent and cold youth. Guo Chaoyang frowned. Just as he was about to speak, Yang Zhao, who was beside him, suddenly took a step forward and said softly, Brother Guo, let me do it. Good. Guo Chaoyang glanced at him. There was a faint hint of admiration in his eyes as he nodded. As soon as Yang Zhao finished speaking, he turned around and looked at Yang Tai and the others coldly. He cupped his hands together and said indifferently, I am Yang Zhao of Taishu Temple's disciple. Xianmen Tianzong, please enlighten me. Chapter 1005. With an indifferent expression, Yang Zhao looked at Yang Tai and said silently, Please enlighten me. Although he did not completely believe what Guo Chaoyang had said before, Guo Chaoyang had mentioned that not only had his cultivation stagnated recently, but it was even showing signs of regression. Yang Zhao was well aware of this problem. He knew his own affairs best. Although he was unwilling to admit it, Yang Zhao knew that the strong rise of the disciples of Xianmen Tianzong had indeed made his state of mind unstable. This was a kind of damage and regression on a purely spiritual level. His hostility towards the disciples of Xianmen Tianzong, his desire to get rid of them quickly, and the feeling of humiliation because he had been saved by them, in fact, more or less stemmed from his bewilderment and self-doubt, which caused his Taoist heart to be clouded. Before this, the subconscious idea in Yang Zhao's mind was to find a way to eliminate these factors that made his state of mind unstable. He would use the method of eliminating external demons to eliminate internal demons and eliminate the demons in his heart. However, after talking with Guo Chaoyang, Yang Zhao changed his mind and decided to fight the disciples of Xianmen Tianzong head-on to determine who was superior. Looking at Yang Zhao, Zhou Yunsong's expression was cold, and his body moved slightly. Yang Tai raised his palm to stop him and said softly, Senior brother Zhou, let me do this. We need you to hold the line. Li Xingfei said telepathically, If we are talking about holding the line and keeping an eye on the others on the other side, Brother Yang, you are more suitable. Yang Tai answered, Compared to senior brother Zhou, I am at a disadvantage. Lu Xiaofeng chuckled and said, You and Yun Song, wait for a while. I will do this. Li Xingfei said, You have fought with Wan Jingluan before, so they are more familiar with your situation. Let me do it. It doesn't matter. So what if they are familiar with me? Lu Xiaofeng flexed his fingers. I don't have full confidence in the disciples of the Taishu Temple in the Yuanning period, but I have more than enough confidence in the disciples below the Yuanning period. Hearing this, Li Xingfei smiled and didn't say anything else. Yang Tai also smiled and nodded. I wish Senior Lu Xia success. Zhou Yunsong looked at Lu Xiaofeng. Among the second-generation disciples of Shenmen Tianzong, he was the most eccentric and rarely interacted with the others. Only Lu Xiaofeng and Yan Wei could talk to each other. He opened his mouth but didn't say anything in the end. He just nodded solemnly at Lu Xiaofeng. With you guys here, I can naturally rest assured. Lu Xiaofeng smiled. He understood what Zhou Yunsong meant. He was telling him to fight Yang Zhao without worry and not worry about anything else. If Mu Xian, Qin Xingyu, Guo Chaoyang, and the others interfered, Zhou Yunsong would act immediately. Lu Xiaofeng dusted off his clothes and immediately stepped forward. He came in front of Yang Zhao and cupped his hands. Shenmen Tianzong disciple Lu Xiaofeng asks for guidance from fellow Taoist Yang of the Taishu Temple. After a short pause, Lu Xiaofeng asked indifferently, in the battle between you and me, do we need to use external objects such as magic tools or talismans? This point had to be made clear in advance. Generally speaking, in a more peaceful battle of magical powers, both sides would only compete with their own magical powers and would not use external objects such as magic tools. If external objects were to be used in an unrestricted battle, it often meant that it was a battle of life and death. If external objects were to be used, the deciding factor of the outcome of the battle would no longer depend on whose magic power was higher or whose magical powers were stronger. The lower the cultivation of both sides, the more obvious this was. After all, for the cultivators of the Golden Elixir period, a magic tool could directly determine the final outcome of the battle. Yuanning magic tools and Yuanning talismans would also affect the outcome of the battle to a large extent. This was the case even for outstanding descendants of Shenmen Tianzong and Taishu Temple like Lu Xiaofeng and Yang Zhao. A Yuanning magic tool and a Yuanning talisman might not be able to completely determine the final outcome, but what if there were a few more? Only in the battle of magical powers, nothing else. Yang Zhao replied indifferently. As soon as these words came out, Mu Xian frowned slightly, but her brows immediately relaxed. Chen Xingyu's expression did not change, but his eyes were slightly closed, and the light in his eyes was restrained. On the contrary, the expression on Guo Chaoyang's face became colder, and he shook his head imperceptibly. He could see very clearly that it was not that Yang Zhao did not want to have a life-and-death battle with Lu Xiaofeng. If he could kill Lu Xiaofeng, Yang Zhao would be more than happy to do so. Guo Chaoyang, who had heard from Yang Zhao about their previous experience of fighting with Tang Jun, naturally understood that the reason why Yang Zhao chose to only fight with magical powers and did not use any external objects was actually because he was afraid that Lu Xiaofeng would have as many treasures as Tang Jun suppressed Shan Xiang and Yang Zhao by himself and killed Wan Jingluan. In addition to his amazing magical powers, as a Golden Elixir period cultivator, he had 3 Yuanning magic tools that he carried with him, which was really shocking. Moreover, his 3 Yuanning magic tools, whether it was the Sun Crown, the Xitigarbha Pure Yang Mirror, or the Pure Yang Taoist Robe, were all of outstanding quality. With such wealth, he was even more extravagant than most Yuanning cultivators, which shocked Yang Zhao and the others. The magic tools and treasures that the disciples of Taishu Temple carried with them were also extraordinary. Not to mention Shan Xiang, who was already in the middle stage of Yuanning, Yang Zhao and Wan Zhengluan were also only Golden Elixir period cultivators, but they also had Yuanning magic tools to protect themselves. Compared to the descendants of other forces, they were naturally local tycoons. However, there was a fear of comparison. Standing in front of Tang Jun, who was overflowing with wealth, Yang Zhao immediately made others feel that he was extremely poor. In fact, Taishu Temple had a long history and a large business. Naturally, it had stored a lot of resources and treasures. If they really wanted to arm their disciples to the teeth, it was not an impossible thing. However, Taishu Temple would guarantee the basic safety of its disciples when they went out to train. It would not give too many treasures to prevent its disciples from indulging in material things and delaying their own cultivation. There were quite a few nascent soul magic tools stored in the Taishu Temple's treasure pavilion, but there were very few nascent soul magic tools that could compare to the Sun Crown, Ksitigarbha Pure Yang Mirror, Heaven-Returning Magic Shield, and other treasures. Magic tools like the Sun Crown, although it was a Yuanying magic tool, were refined by Xiao Yan, who had already achieved primordial soul. Naturally, they were different from the magic tools refined by Yuanying cultivators. There were many primordial soul adepts in Taishu Temple. Not only were there many, but it was also the Holy Land with the largest number of primordial soul adepts in the Divine Land. However, most of the time nascent divinity cultivators spent would be used to nurture and refine their own magical treasures, aside from cultivating their Taoist techniques and divine abilities. Not many would spend their time refining nascent soul magical treasures. Normally, after Xiao Yan and the others achieved primordial soul, it should be the same. However, they were all richer than Tang Jun. Some primordial soul adepts might not even have magic tools, but when it came to Xiao Yan and the others, they had all kinds of magic tools bestowed by Master Lin Feng, picked up by themselves, killed enemies. There were all kinds of magic tools. This allowed them to not only take time to refine some magic tools for their own disciples, but also to help Yang Qing, Yu Hongyan and the others, who had not achieved primordial soul. Of course, this behavior was not known to outsiders yet, or they would inevitably be scolded for being shameless. However, Lin Feng and his disciples did not care too much as long as they were happy. Anyway, it was not the first time they had been scolded like this. Moreover, in addition to self-refining, Xiao Yan and the others not only picked up magic tools and all kinds of rare treasures, but also many top-notch Yuanying magic tools. Over the years, every time they went out, they came back with a lot of magic tools. Many of them were no longer of use to themselves, so they naturally gave them to the younger disciples. On the other hand, because of the existence of Lin Feng's talent detector, bone structure, comprehension, and willpower can be selected. Disciples with low luck can naturally enter, but disciples with high luck and the total value of the four will definitely not miss it. The luck of the younger generation disciples is actually very good. In fact, Xianmen Tianzong also had a certain control over the magic tools that the disciples carried with them. They also had to pay attention to balance, lest the disciples did not think about making progress, blindly relying on external objects, and neglect their own cultivation. And now, it was actually the result after the control. Sometimes Lin Feng would laugh at himself from time to time, saying that the disciples in his sect were using their heaven-defying luck to make up for the historical gap between them and other forces. Therefore, although they were not like Tang Jun, Yang Tai, and other chief disciples who were really unparalleled nouveau riches armed by their own masters, Lu Xiaofeng, Li Xingfei, and the others were not poor. If they really went all out, Yang Zhao might not really be able to compete with them. But for Guo Chaoyang and Yang Zhao, even if they were beaten to death, they would not believe that every cultivator in Xianmen Tianzong's golden elixir period could be as rich as Tang Jun, but Yang Zhao did not want to take this risk. When this scene fell into the eyes of Guo Chaoyang, he could undoubtedly see that although Yang Zhao took the initiative to challenge, he still did not have enough confidence in his heart and was full of misgivings. It was not wrong to think of ways to increase his chances of winning, but the problem was that Yang Zhao did not know the details of his opponent, so he adopted the most conservative approach, which was almost to prevent defeat before winning. Such a style was naturally not liked by Guo Chaoyang. After all, his current opponent was not Zhou Yunsong and Yang Tai, who were in the late golden elixir period, but Lu Xiaofeng, who was one realm lower than him. Although Lu Xiaofeng had defeated Wan Jingluan, Yang Zhao's strength was also stronger than Wan Jingluan. Lu Xiaofeng, Yang Tai, and the others were slightly taken aback by Yang Zhao's answer of choosing to only fight and not compete with external objects. Lu Xiaofeng looked Yang Zhao up and down and was a little puzzled, but he did not pay too much attention and immediately nodded. Sure. After saying that, the aura of magic power surged from both of them at the same time, and a dazzling golden light suddenly appeared all over Lu Xiaofeng's body. The needle-like golden light shone continuously around his body, and it was extremely dazzling, causing Yang Zhao, who was in front of him, to have no choice but to squint his eyes slightly. True sun fire? Lu Xiaofeng's body was like golden needles, dazzling and gathering into a ball of pure golden flames. This was naturally the true sun fire, also known as the Great Sun Heavenly Brilliance. He learned from Xiao Yan and cultivated the Tao Te Ching and the Burning Sky Mantra. While using them as the main principles, he also cultivated the Great Sun Heavenly Brilliance scripture, refining the true sun fire seed and cultivating the Great Sun Heavenly Brilliance. Surrounded by this golden true fire, he looked like a small sun. Yang Zhao looked at him calmly and asked indifferently, "Lu Xiaofeng, as far as I know, you seem to be one of the first batch of second-generation true disciples of Xianmen Tianzong? You should be the eldest disciple under Elder Xiao, right?" Chapter 1006. Hearing Yang Zhao's question, Lu Xiaofeng raised his eyebrows and smiled faintly. "What do you want to say?" Yang Zhao said faintly, "The first seat disciple under Elder Xiao seems to be that Tang Jun. I heard that he joined the sect when it opened its doors for the third time?" Lu Xiaofeng shrugged his shoulders and smiled nonchalantly. "Isn't your method of sowing discord too low level?" "Sowing discord? There's no need for that," Yang Zhao said indifferently, "because the gap between you and that Tang Jun is too big. Anyone would know that you can't beat him, so what's the point of sowing discord?" Lu Xiaofeng raised his eyebrows and looked at Yang Zhao. Yang Zhao said calmly, "According to the vast thousand worlds time, that Tang Jun should have joined the Kunlun Mountain Dharma Assembly 7 years ago, when your sect opened its doors for the third time. What about you? I think you joined the sect when it opened its doors for the first time, right? I can't remember how long it was, but it's been at least 10 years. A faint smile appeared on Yang Zhao's indifferent face. "I wonder how long the two of you stayed in the heavenly grotto heaven? In terms of actual cultivation time, who's longer and who's shorter? You're already at the middle stage of the golden elixir, so you're not bad either. If I'm not wrong, you should be facing the Yin-Win tribulation at any time, right? Unfortunately, that Tang Jun probably already has the ability to face the Void Thunder tribulation." Lu Xiaofeng stared at him and suddenly smiled. "It's fine to tell you how many years I've cultivated, but how long did you take to reach the late stage of the golden elixir?" Yang Zhao slowly shook his head. "I've said it before, I don't have any intention of sowing discord, because there's no need for that. I just suddenly thought of this matter, so I'm just asking. I have to say that your sect's Elder Zhao's foresight when choosing a first-seat disciple is still very accurate." Lu Xiaofeng smiled. "It's fine if you don't want to answer. Let's see who's the real deal." With that, his figure flashed, and he was already in front of Yang Zhao, slapping down with his palm. Previously, when Tang Jun fought against Shan Xiang, Wan Zhengluan, and Yang Zhao, Lu Xiaofeng had helped maintain the defense of the heaven-returning Law Realm. However, he had seen the entire process of the fight and naturally knew that Yang Zhao was a pure Dharma cultivator. Since that was the case, close combat was definitely the best way to deal with him. The closer they were, the more effective it would be against Lu Xiaofeng. Most of the disciples under Xiao Yan Fentianya had deep attainments in martial cultivation. Lu Xiaofeng was also one of the best. Lu Xiaofeng slapped out with his palm. It did not seem to match the ferocious momentum of the solar real fire that surrounded his body. The palm force was as gentle and continuous as flowing water. It was the can water palm of the 8-trigram fist that was passed down in Xianmen Tianzong. This palm force was not compatible with Fentianya's Taoist techniques. Very few of Fentianya's disciples used it. However, when Lu Xiaofeng slapped down with his palm, halfway through the palm force, he suddenly changed his palm into a fist. The can water palm turned into the leaf fire fist. A ferocious power exploded fiercely. The softest became the strongest in the blink of an eye. There was no delay in the change, and it seemed extremely natural. The power that Lu Xiaofeng exploded with this change was much more ferocious than when he used the leaf fire fist directly. The golden light of the solar real fire on the iron fist flickered continuously. It was as if a small sun was smashing down on the top of Yang Zhao's head. This scene fell into the eyes of Yang Tai, Li Xingfei, and Zhou Yunsong, and they felt that their eyes lit up. Using the can to fill the Li, Lu Xia Shixiang's change of move has deeply grasped the essence of the 8-trigram fist. Facing Lu Xiafeng's fist, the expressions of the people from Taishu Temple also moved slightly. This change shows the depth of martial arts. Yang Zhao, who was facing the attack, also frowned slightly. However, his expression was normal, as if he had already expected Lu Xiafeng's ferocious attack. He was just amazed by the exquisite change of move of using the can to fill the Li. Almost at the moment when Lu Xiafeng's body moved, Yang Zhao's body floated backward. His feet kept tapping lightly, as if he was stepping on a continuously extending flight of stairs. This was the escape technique of Taishu Temple, the Heaven Ascension technique. As he retreated, although the Li Fire Fist, which was supported by the Solar Real Fire, was violent, it looked like it was going to miss. Lu Xiafeng let out a clear whistle and used the escape technique of Heaven and Earth 8 directions, flying in the sky and burrowing into the ground, chasing after Yang Zhao. Heaven and Earth 8 techniques and 8-trigram fist, 1 technique and 1 martial art, were the standard divine techniques of Xianmen Tianzong. They were refined by Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi, and the other martial brothers, and prepared for the younger disciples. They looked simple, but in fact they were all-encompassing. On the premise of reducing the difficulty of practicing, they could increase their power as much as possible. Between these two almost contradictory characteristics, they constantly sought a balance and worked hard to improve. Every disciple of Xianmen Tianzong, without exception, would earnestly practice these two divine techniques. As their cultivation base continued to grow, their horizons continued to widen, and their understanding of the great Tao of heaven and earth continued to deepen. Perhaps there would come a day when they would no longer use Heaven and Earth 8 techniques and 8-trigram fist. But for the cultivators of the Golden Elixir period, these two divine techniques were still quite exquisite. Yang Zhao used the Heaven Ascension technique and dodged Lu Xiafeng's attack, but Lu Xiafeng immediately chased after him, not giving him the slightest chance to breathe. Good timing. Although Yang Zhao looked distressed, his eyes were as calm as before. Instead, he was very satisfied with the current situation. Suddenly, he began to chant. One strange syllable after another came out of his mouth, forming a strange melody and the tune of an ancient ballad. The song was ethereal and unpredictable, containing a vast world and a grand and mighty meaning. Faint white clouds dispersed along with the song, gradually enveloping the surrounding area. Hearing this ballad, Yang Tai, Li Xingfei, and Zhou Yunsong all frowned slightly. Yang Tai looked at Li Xingfei and asked, "Senior Sister Li, is this the misty supreme song of Taishu Temple?" Li Xingfei stared at the white clouds that were getting thicker and thicker. "I've never seen it with my own eyes, but it shouldn't be wrong." The misty supreme song originated from the divine technique of the supreme Wang Qing Dao. It combined the killing technique of sound with other divine techniques and supernatural powers, and combined the ethereal song with the tangible clouds. The cultivators of Taishu Temple were placed in the clouds and moved along with the song. Their bodies became ethereal and unpredictable, and it was difficult for their opponents to grasp their movements. When the misty supreme song was combined with escape techniques like the Heaven Ascension technique and the clear sky flow, it would be difficult for his opponents to hurt him. The white clouds floated in the air as if they were endless, yet they were soft and gentle. It was difficult for Lu Xiafeng to burn them all with his Sun True Fire. Although this divine technique wasn't a passive defense, it indeed combined the essence of the defensive techniques of Taishu Temple. If it was combined with the Endless Transformation technique, its defensive power would be even more outstanding. While the song was still lingering, Yang Zhao's voice echoed in the white clouds through his supernatural power and divine sense. "If it were Tang Jun with his pale flame power and nether evil flame, I'm afraid this divine technique wouldn't work. Or Zhou Yunsong, who is standing over there, could break my divine technique with his burning sun vitality shattering qi. Unfortunately, you're not the two of them, so you can only be trapped in my divine technique." The misty supreme song was not only used for hiding and defense. The white clouds were also constantly eroding Lu Xiaofeng's supernatural power, trying to break Lu Xiaofeng's protective supernatural power restriction. The true fire of the sun was tyrannical, and the white clouds retreated as soon as they came into contact with it. But soon they came back again and again. Just like that, the cycle kept repeating, like a blunt knife cutting the flesh, wearing down Lu Xiaofeng's magic power bit by bit. Facing the predicament before him, Lu Xiaofeng wasn't anxious or impatient. Yang Zhao's provocation didn't seem to have any effect on him. His hands changed hand seals, and a large amount of sun true fire gathered, turning into a small pill. It looked inconspicuous, but it contained an astonishing explosive power. It exploded with a loud bang, directly clearing away a large portion of the white clouds around it. However, Yang Zhao's figure flickered slightly, activating the endless transformation technique. He changed between the real and the illusory. After he recovered, he immediately disappeared again with the help of the heaven ascension technique and the white clouds. Accompanied by the misty song, the white clouds once again densely covered Lu Xiaofeng. Looking at Lu Xiaofeng, Yang Zhao's cold face showed a hint of a smile. Wan Jingluan was defeated by Lu Xiaofeng in the past. After returning to the mountain, although he was ashamed to talk about it, he still knew the severity of the matter. He honestly reported the process of his fight with Lu Xiaofeng. On one hand, it was because of his personality, and on the other hand, it was because of his understanding of the great Tao of heaven and earth. Lu Xiaofeng cultivated the divine technique of the Book of Tao of Heaven. It was called the Wandering Qi of the Heavenly Meridian, and it was an escape technique. And Lu Xiaofeng was also one of the 3 most powerful escape techniques among the second-generation true disciples of Xianmen Tianzong at the same level of cultivation. Yang Zhao had indeed heard about Lu Xiaofeng's general situation from Wan Jingluan. Although he had not seen it with his own eyes, he knew the subtlety of Lu Xiaofeng's escape technique. In fact, in the beginning, Yang Zhao's target of challenge was not Lu Xiaofeng, but Yang Tai. Whether it was what he had heard about Yang Tai's cultivation and strength in the past, or what he had done when facing the turbulent flow of spiritual energy, Yang Zhao was well aware of it. Generally speaking, when facing Yang Tai, the headache was secondary. The key was that they would fight very sullenly, very vexed, and have no place to use their strength. Many people felt that they would rather fight head-on with Tang Jun, Han Yang, and Zhou Yunsong than to slowly grind with Yang Tai. Although it was said that attacking was the real initiative, and defending for a long time was bound to make mistakes, Yang Tai's past experience had fully proved this point. When the difference in cultivation was not too big, most of the time, it was he who exhausted his opponent to death. This included some opponents whose cultivation and strength were originally above his. If he could win, his opponent might still have the mood to slowly grind with him, but the problem was that there was a 99% chance that he would not win. However, it just so happened that Yang Zhao had the patience to slowly grind with Yang Tai. In a certain sense, Yang Zhao's favored opponent was Yang Tai's type. People like Tang Jun, Zhou Yunsong, and Han Yang, who were good at strong attacks, Yang Zhao had no chance of winning against them. And if his opponent was Lu Xiaofeng, Yang Zhao was actually not afraid. Based on the situation Wan Jingluan had reported, Lu Xiaofeng was not good at strong attacks. It was just that if he used the heavenly meridian wandering qi to fight slowly, it would be difficult for Yang Zhao to defeat him. Therefore, infuriating Lu Xiaofeng and luring him into the trap that he had weaved was in Yang Zhao's interest. Then, Yang Zhao would gradually show weakness, and his external emotions would also change from arrogance to panic, giving Lu Xiaofeng the illusion that success was right in front of him, and thus leading Lu Xiaofeng to continue attacking, which he was not good at. From the first conversation after confirming that his opponent was Lu Xiaofeng, the trap had already been set, waiting for Lu Xiaofeng to barge into it. He kept struggling, and the more he struggled, the tighter the trap became. Chapter 1007. Yang Zhao cast the Misty Supreme Song Technique, Heaven Ascension Technique, Infinite Transformation, and other magical powers together. His body was hidden among the white clouds, ethereal and unpredictable. Lu Xiaofeng urged the Sun Real Fire to attack the enemy, washing away the surrounding layers of white clouds. It seemed that Yang Zhao could only helplessly repair the surrounding clouds. For a moment, he could only parry, but not fight back. The golden light of the true sun fire exploded, and a patch of cloud chi was completely destroyed. It seemed like it wouldn't take long before Yang Zhao's supernatural power was completely broken. Perhaps, with just a little more effort, it could completely destroy his luck. On the other hand, Yang Zhao could only barely hold on. He seemed to be in a precarious situation, as if Lu Xiaofeng could break through his defense at any time. Looking at the course of the battle, it seemed that Yang Zhao, who was constantly repairing the white clouds, consumed more magic power. Although he was in the late Golden Elixir realm, compared to Lu Xiaofeng who was in the middle Golden Elixir realm, he did not seem to have an obvious advantage in terms of total magic power. Moreover, according to most situations, if one defended for a long time, he would lose. Defense was always passive. As long as one was not careful, it was possible to lose everything, and all the previous efforts would be in vain. But was this really the case? At the very least, Yang Zhao was very satisfied with the current situation, as his figure was hidden among the white clouds, drifting and untraceable. In fact, when he cast the Misty Supreme Song technique, the burden on his magic power was very low. This was also one of the strengths of this magical power. On the contrary, if Lu Xiaofeng kept attacking like this, his magic power would be consumed much faster than Yang Zhao's, and it would not take long for his magic power to be exhausted. As for the possibility that Lu Xiaofeng might break his magical power before his magic power was exhausted and his attack weakened, Yang Zhao was not worried. If it were Tang Jun in the middle stage of Golden Elixir, Yang Zhao wouldn't have the confidence to defeat him. But through the previous fight, he was sure that Lu Xiaofeng was indeed unable to break his magic by force. Even if he used the Sun Real Fire to activate the last of the 8 laws of heaven and earth, it would still be the same. Since that was the case, the situation had always been under his control. However, from a bystander's point of view, the person who was treading on thin ice was Yang Zhao, and the situation was extremely unfavorable for him. A late-stage Golden Elixir cultivator was being suppressed by an intermediate-stage Golden Elixir cultivator, which was quite embarrassing. But for Yang Zhao, the final victory was the most important. It made no difference to him whether he won the battle or turned defeat into victory. As for the possibility that after Lu Xiaofeng noticed something strange, he suddenly jumped out of the circle and did not fight, using the previous victory to show off. This possibility was naturally considered by Yang Zhao. Firstly, through Wan Zhengluan's previous description of Lu Xiaofeng and Yang Zhao's own observation, Lu Xiaofeng seemed to be casual, but in fact, he was quite tough and disdained to use such means. Secondly, if Lu Xiaofeng really did so, Yang Zhao also had a way to deal with it. In the case that Lu Xiaofeng had a strong attack and his magic power had been greatly consumed, if he had the intention to retreat, Yang Zhao might take advantage of it. However, seeing that although Lu Xiaofeng's expression was calm as usual, there was a faint manic impatience in his eyes, Yang Zhao smiled slightly. The situation was developing in the direction he hoped for the most. If Lu Xiaofeng continued to attack like this, the later he noticed the problem, the more he would consume. At that time, even if he wanted to withdraw, he would not be able to do so. Especially after seeing that Lu Xiaofeng's attack was not fully successful, his fellow disciple, Li Xingfei, also showed a look of pity on her face. Seeing this scene, the corners of Yang Zhao's mouth curled into an almost imperceptible smile. This was a battle where the onlookers had a clear view of the situation. Although Li Xingfei did not speak, her magic power aura, spiritual sense, and thoughts would more or less affect Lu Xiaofeng, whose Tao came from the same source as her. This kind of influence was very small, like a gust of wind in the outside environment, or a little higher humidity in the air, almost undetectable. But the more inconspicuous this kind of change was, the more it could have a subtle effect. It was silent and had an effect unconsciously. It was possible that Lu Xiaofeng's emotions would be infected and he would become more anxious. The battle was still in a stalemate. After activating the Sun Real Fire again to sweep away the smoke around him, Lu Xiaofeng finally frowned, looking at the layers of white clouds in front of him, showing a look of hesitation. After a few more rounds of attack, his attack suddenly slowed down. His eyes flashed, silently perceiving the layers of white clouds around him. The next moment, Lu Xiaofeng frowned. Although his expression was calm as usual, without any clues, his eyes faintly showed struggle and unwillingness. Finally, after launching another round of attack, Lu Xiaofeng's figure suddenly flashed, flying out of the clouds. Your reaction is quite fast, but unfortunately, it's already too late. Yang Zhao smiled coldly. You cultivators of Shenmen Tianzong also pay attention to practical benefits. Not all of you are so arrogant, are you? He also felt a little pity in his heart. Lu Xiaofeng chose to withdraw immediately, using the advantage he had on the surface, and then give up. In this way, at least he still had some strength left, and it would be difficult for Yang Zhao to obtain a complete victory. After all, although Yang Zhao had a backup plan, his own attacking ability was actually not strong. Seeing that Lu Xiaofeng had withdrawn, Yang Zhao did not dare to delay. If he let Lu Xiaofeng jump out of the fighting ring, then his previous hard work would be in vain. Pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger, he would really become a pig. He made an incantation gesture with both hands, and the faintly discernible white clouds that enveloped the two suddenly condensed. In an instant, the vast clouds seemed to have condensed into a solid form, extremely hard, and completely sealed off the space in this part of the world. Be it himself or Lu Xiaofeng, both of them seemed to have become little bugs frozen in amber, unable to move or struggle free. Watching the battle from the side, Mu Xian, Chen Xingyu, Guo Chaiyang, and the others raised their eyebrows. Heavenly Abyss Shattering Cloud Technique? Taishu Temple's direct disciples were naturally aware of the ethereal Supreme Song's characteristic of conserving magical power. Even those who did not cultivate the Grand Wang Qing Dao knew about it. Naturally, they also knew that there was another spell in the Grand Wang Qing Dao called the Heavenly Abyss Shattering Cloud Technique. The Grand Wang Qing Dao merged the various great Daos of heaven and earth, and was mysterious and unpredictable. One of them was the Grand Nirvana Dao. Right now, outside Ding of Shenzhou, Xianlin Taoist, who was in a standoff with Lin Feng and Wang Lin with Shoichi Daishin, had his Dao integration fruit that stemmed from the Grand Nirvana Dao. Under the Grand Nirvana Dao, there were other branches. One of them was called the Grand Shattering Dao, and the Heavenly Abyss Shattering Cloud Technique was a derivative spell of the Grand Shattering Dao. With the activation of the remarkable power spell, the vast white clouds directly shattered the void, causing the surrounding space to shatter. Although Yang Zhao was not adept at forceful attacks, he had enveloped Lu Xiaofeng within the white clouds and used the Heavenly Abyss Shattering Cloud Technique to shatter both the inside and the outside. Its power was rather considerable. At this moment, Lu Xiaofeng was attempting to withdraw and retreat. Facing the Heavenly Abyss Shattering Cloud Technique that was attacking both inside and outside, even if he still had energy left, it was not easy. Yang Zhao was also within the white clouds, and his body would also be affected by the Heavenly Abyss Shattering Cloud Technique. However, firstly, he was the one casting the spell, and secondly, he was already prepared. Naturally, it was much easier for him than Lu Xiaofeng. Just as Lu Xiaofeng was exhausted from dealing with the Heavenly Abyss Shattering Cloud Technique, his follow-up attacks followed up. Order! Yang Zhao let out a low cry, and the white clouds enveloping the two of them immediately started to shatter. However, at this moment, he suddenly saw that Lu Xiaofeng had turned to look at him. There was a hint of a smile on the other party's face. I've been waiting for you. An ominous feeling rose in Yang Zhao's heart. What made him feel even more ominous was that Li Xingfei, who was watching the battle from the outside, had suddenly started laughing as well. Lu Xiaofeng looked at Yang Zhao, a carefree and unruly expression on his face. He smiled leisurely and said, "Now I believe that your earlier nonsense was not meant to sow discord between us. From the start, you only wanted to provoke me and make me lose my cool. The subsequent provocation was actually also to disrupt my thoughts, to make me continue to sink into anxiety and anger, to make me feel indignant, and to make me anxious to prove myself and retaliate against your provocation. The singing of the ethereal grand hymn had completely stopped. Amidst the white clouds, Yang Zhao's face was faintly discernible, his face expressionless. Lu Xiaofeng's palms suddenly joined together, and a dazzling golden light appeared on his left wrist, extending outwards like a huge bow. The more I relied on my strength to attack, the more I actually gave up on my own strength and escape techniques, and used my own weakness to compete with you. Lu Xiaofeng's right hand pulled on the golden bow in his left hand, as if drawing a bow and notching an arrow. I fought with Wan Zhengluan before, so you know from him that my escape techniques and movement techniques are not bad. I'm good at guerrilla warfare, but I'm not good at forceful attacks. A dazzling golden arrow appeared on the bow. The tip of the arrow was incomparably dazzling, and the true fire of the sun condensed like never before. It was like a golden sun, and its terrifying might caused Yang Zhao's heart to sink to the bottom. Xianmen Tianzong Fen Tianya's Dao technique, the mystical ability of the burning heaven mantra, the burning heaven divine light. It could be used to be refined with any kind of true fire, and its destructive power was extremely shocking when it targeted a single point. But the problem is, how did you know that when I fought with Wan Zhengluan back then, I had used my full strength? Lu Xiaofeng looked at Yang Zhao and laughed softly. If you had continued to hide, this arrow of mine might have been able to break your previous technique, but I don't have full confidence that it would be able to completely finish you off. Now that you've stopped on your own, I couldn't have asked for more. I can tell that this new technique of yours is quite powerful, but it has a weakness, and that is, the speed at which it is cast is too slow. It can't compare to mine. Before he finished speaking, a golden divine arrow was released from the bowstring, dragging a long golden tail of flames behind it. Like a golden meteor, it pierced through the seemingly solidified clouds. As if the clouds had parted to reveal the sun, the layers of white clouds dispersed, and a dazzling golden flame spread out, forming a blazing sun in the sky. Yang Zhao could no longer care about using the heavenly abyss shattering clouds mantra, and hurriedly performed the infinite transformation technique, attempting to evade Lu Xiaofeng's burning heaven divine light. But the flames that exploded turned into a golden blazing sun, burning in the sky for a long time. Yang Zhao could only watch in despair as his figure gradually returned to reality from the illusory realm of nothingness, and was then slowly engulfed by the golden blazing sun. Chapter 1008. Lu Xiaofeng's heaven-burning divine light shot out, and the void was like a golden sun rising. The rolling golden fire burned continuously, like the sun in the middle of the sky, roasting everything in the world and engulfing Yang Zhao, who had retreated from the infinite illusion technique. A large amount of white clouds evaporated and disappeared. The infinite illusion technique of the Taishu Temple was extremely mysterious. It could place a cultivator in between reality and illusion, avoid the opponent's attack, and make the opponent's magical power unable to touch the body. No matter how powerful the attack was, if it could not hit the target, everything would be in vain. However, this technique also had many drawbacks. The user's cultivation base was not at the primordial spirit realm. When the infinite illusion technique was used, the user's body would turn real into illusion and hide in the infinite illusion realm. When he returned to reality and returned to this side of the world, his position would still stay in the original place. And the time that the cultivators in the golden elixir period stayed in the void realm was very short. Therefore, Yang Zhao could only watch helplessly as he was engulfed by the exploding heaven-burning divine light and suffered the burning of the true fire of the sun. I've been tricked. Yang Zhao sighed in his heart. He had schemed against Lu Xiaofeng, but in the end, he was schemed against by Lu Xiaofeng. To be precise, there was also Li Xingfei. Looking at Li Xingfei's mocking smile, how could Yang Zhao not know that she had shown obvious emotional fluctuations at the beginning, and it was intentional? Doing so, naturally, was not to affect Lu Xiaofeng's state of mind. On the contrary, it was to cooperate with Lu Xiaofeng to interfere with Yang Zhao's judgment. The person who walked step by step into the trap and finally fell into his own trap was not Lu Xiaofeng but him. After he understood all of this, Yang Zhao felt quite regretful in his heart. If he had used the Misty Supreme Song technique to deal with Lu Xiaofeng, even though he might not have been able to defend against Lu Xiaofeng's heaven-burning divine ray, at least he would have had the leeway to continue the battle. He wouldn't have been defeated like he was now, with no room for a comeback. Seeing that Yang Zhao was about to be engulfed by the raging inferno, Qin Xingyu, Mu Xian, and Guo Chaoyang frowned slightly. Guo Chaoyang suddenly moved and came to Yang Zhao's side. As he waved his sleeves, two streams of transcendence energy, one black and one white, circled around, dispersing the raging solar true fire. Because they had agreed to only fight with magical powers, and not to compete with external objects, both Yang Zhao and Lu Xiaofeng had handed over their magical tools and talismans to Yang Tai and Guo Chaoyang before they started fighting. So now, Yang Zhao was facing a disaster, and he didn't even have the power to protect himself. Junior brother Yang has lost this battle, Yang Kai said with a smile. Guo Chaoyang snorted coldly, only dispersing the solar true fire that was attacking Yang Zhao, and didn't take the opportunity to attack Lu Xiaofeng. Lu Xiaofeng didn't take it too far. He cupped his hands toward Guo Chaoyang and Yang Zhao, who only survived because of his help. Thank you for letting me win. It's just the first round, Guo Chaoyang said calmly, his face as gloomy as still water. Hearing this, Yang Tai, Lu Xiaofeng, and Li Xingfei raised their eyebrows slightly. Zhou Yunsong was still expressionless, staring coldly at Guo Chaoyang. Outside the little Kelowna world, Lin Feng and Shoichi Daishin had witnessed the whole process of the battle. At their level, no matter in terms of strength or status, the battle of magical powers between the practitioners in the Golden Elixir period, no matter how exquisite it was hardly worth paying attention to. For Lin Feng and Shoichi Daishin, it was more about observing the spirit, qi, and spirit of the younger generation, as well as the potential they showed. With a calm expression, Shoichi Daishin said lightly, "Congratulations, sect leader Lin, for having a successor." Lin Feng also looked calm. Shoichi Daishin is flattering me. The younger generation does have their merits, but they also need more experience. Regarding the performance of his own disciples, Lin Feng was neither modest nor flattering them. His comments were also straightforward and simple. The great devil doppelgangers of Xianlin Taoist and Wang Lin stood behind their respective elders. They were silent, staring at each other in silence. Lin Feng and Shoichi Daishin had been wrestling through the little Kelowna world transformed by Ding of Shenzhou. At this moment, the periphery of the little Kelowna world was gradually shrouded by a mass of purple qi and a mass of white qi. The two sides were clearly separated, each occupying half of the little Kelowna world. One of the dragon claws of Lin Feng's Brontosaurus doppelganger and one of the palm of the god of war doppelganger were currently placed on the little Kelowna world. His expression did not change, but his eyes flickered slightly. The purple qi that covered the little Kelowna world began to permeate the interior of the world. Almost at the same time, Shoichi Daishin did the same. The white qi also began to permeate the interior of the little Kelowna world, causing the interior of the little Kelowna world to be covered in white mist. Yang Tai, Zhou Yunsong, Guo Chaoyang, Qin Xingyu, Mu Xian, and the others who were confronting each other all looked at the world that suddenly began to change in front of them. They were on full alert. All of a sudden, the vast purple and white qi intertwined, causing the heaven and earth to tremble. Yang Tai and the others were immersed in the qi world. The scenery before their eyes suddenly changed. It was as if they were riding on the clouds, shuttling through the interior of the little Kelowna world. The scenery before their eyes kept changing. It looked familiar and strange at the same time. Yang Tai, Zhou Yunsong, and the others saw the Kunlun mountain range that they were very familiar with. They saw the vast East Sea, the southern wasteland, and the snowy plains of the north. However, their final destination was a mountain that they had never seen before. However, although they had never been here before, Yang Tai and the other Shenmen Tianzong disciples could still recognize where they were based on the landscape and landmarks along the way. This should be the mountain gate of the Taishu Temple, where the White Cloud Mountain is located. Yang Tai, Lu Xiaofeng, and Li Xingfei looked at each other. They were all surprised. Why were we sent here? What is this? Even the group of Taishu Temple disciples was a little surprised when they saw the familiar scenery before them. Outside of Ding of Shenzhou, Lin Feng, Shoichi Daishin, Wang Lin, and Xianlin Taoist looked at the scene calmly. Wang Lin mumbled to himself, "Master, it is just as Jian Zongqian and Yin Xiantian said. The White Cloud Mountain is really the spiritual energy flow center of the divine land in the past." Lin Feng nodded. This is the place that laid the foundation for the rise of the Taishu Temple. If it wasn't for the changes in the world and the spiritual energy flow in the divine land becoming chaotic, the Taishu Temple would be even stronger now. Even so, after entering the primeval era, the strength of the Taishu Temple surged once. It had the aura of when it was at its peak. It was just that time and fate coincided with the arrival of the Yuhuang Heavenly Sea. This is also the place where the Haotian mirror appeared. Wang Lin narrowed his eyes as he stared at the interior of the little Kelowna world floating in the light. He stared at the lonely mountain that was not shrouded by clouds and revealed its original appearance. Lin Feng nodded. That's right. The greatest impact of the war that ended the primeval era was not the division of the Great Thousand World into the Divine Land and Infinite Wasteland world, but the birth of the Haotian Mirror. Many things were gradually becoming difficult to verify and were buried in the long river of history. Even if there were some sects that had existed since the primeval era, many secrets had gradually been lost. As the predecessors passed away, there were some secrets that the current successors did not know about. Only Zongqian Dao Jian and the Xiantian seal, which were already Mahayana-grade magic treasures in the primeval age, could participate in many important gatherings and knew a lot of information. They did not encounter any calamities and could live until now, so they knew many secrets of that time. Although he had heard similar rumors in the past, rumors were just rumors. It was only after he came into contact with the Zongqian Dao Jian and the Xiantian seal that Lin Feng understood some things. For example, the Haotian mirror was actually not an enchanted treasure refined by the cultivators of the Taishu Temple. More accurately speaking, it was not an enchanted treasure refined by anyone. This number one enchanted treasure of heaven origin was truly nurtured by the heavens. It was created by the great heaven origin world with the essence of Zhong Daqian's creation. It was different from the light ball that was still boiling in the Yin-Yang Sea, and it was also different from Zhu Yi's Permitha Bridge. The embryo came from the Yingzhou celestial mountain in the Ying Sea, which guided the power of the Ying Sea to nurture it. The clear sky mirror was a magic treasure nurtured by the entire Tianyuan world. The war during the end of the primeval age had caused the Great Thousand World to be divided into two worlds, the Divine Land and Infinite Wasteland world. Other than Juahuang Xianshang, the Taishu Taoist, and the Grand Emperor, the more important reason was that the Haotian mirror had been born from the entire Great Heaven origin world. With the birth of the Haotian mirror, the Great Thousand World had finally been split into two worlds. In truth, the great battle between Juahuang and the Taishu Taoist had caused the Haotian mirror to be born ahead of time. If the treasure had been born naturally, its power would have been even more unimaginable. Of course, if that had happened, no one would have been able to truly obtain the treasure unless that person could transcend the entire Great Heaven origin world. And the place where the Haotian mirror had been born, in the current era, was where the Taishu Temple was located, White Cloud Mountain. It was also for this reason that the Taishu Taoist had chosen to establish his sect here in the end, establishing the eternal foundation of the Taishu Temple. At that time, White Cloud Mountain was the center of the Divine Land's spirit chi. The spirit chi of the world had gathered together. But as time passed, the flow of the spirit chi of the Great Thousand World began to change. Instead of gathering at the center, it began to spread out. But in ancient times, White Cloud Mountain was the undisputed center of the Divine Land. This center wasn't the center of the land, but the place where the spirit chi of the world gathered, and where it was most abundant. When Emperor Xia refined the divine prefecture cauldron in the ancient times, he integrated the heavy true will of earth of the vast land of the divine prefecture into it, so that the internal flow of the spiritual chi in the small divine prefecture world, which was formed by the spiritual power of the magic treasure of creation, was naturally similar to the vast land of the divine prefecture in the ancient times. Therefore, Lin Feng and Shoichi Daishin had cast a spell at the same time, sending their disciples to the core area of Ding of Shenzhou. They were then sent to the foot of White Cloud Mountain in the inner part of the Little Kelowna world. Yang Tai, Zhou Yunsong, Lu Xiaofeng, and Li Xingfei calmed themselves down, and soon realized that there were people who had already arrived. Some of them had found themselves, while others had been sent by Lin Feng and Shoichi Daishin. Upon closer inspection, Xianmen Tianzong and the cultivators of the Taishu Temple were almost all present. Chapter 1009. In front of Bai Yun Mountain in Little Kelowna world, Xianmen Tianzong and the cultivators of Taishu Temple were facing each other. Other than Yang Tai and the other three, Yu Hongyan, Li Yuanfang, and Luo Qinggu, Tang Jun, and Han Yang had also landed in front of the mountain. However, Zhu Yi was nowhere to be seen. The younger disciples of Taishu Temple were also present. Shan Xiang looked ashamed while Zhao Mingxiu looked slightly sad. When they saw Yang Zhao, they thought of Wan Zhengluan who had died. The three of them looked at each other speechlessly. The peak! Yu Hongyan's eyes flickered as he looked at the peak of Bai Yun Mountain in front of him. The others also looked in the direction of the peak. They saw spots of light flashing there. Although it was not noticeable, it was extremely mysterious. If one did not pay attention, they would not notice it at all. However, once they saw the light, it immediately attracted everyone's attention, as if it could suck their souls into it. Yu Hongyan, Li Yuanfang, and Luo Qinggu looked at each other. Its second senior brother. As the light flashed on the peak, spots of starlight sprinkled down. The majestic aura did not leak, but everyone could feel the vast power contained in it. It was like the starry sky of the universe. It was Zhu Yi's Hao Yang doppelganger. At this moment, he was fighting with someone at the peak of Bai Yun Mountain in Little Kelowna world. His opponent was a middle-aged man with a calm expression and a handsome face. He was the supreme elder of Taishu Temple, Kai Fengzhou. Both of them had arrived at the peak of Bai Yun Mountain first and had been fighting for some time. In fact, Kai Fengzhou was quite puzzled. He knew about the foundation of Ding of Shenzhou and the general situation of Xia Huang's sacrificial refining of Ding of Shenzhou. He knew that the heavy earth essence of the divine land was integrated into it. Therefore, the core of Ding of Shenzhou was inside the Little Kelowna world, which was the center of the divine land. It was not the center of the land, but the center where spiritual energy gathered. It was similar to the real divine land in ancient times. It was exactly where Bai Yun Mountain was. However, when Kai Fengzhou arrived, he found that Zhu Yi's Hao Yang doppelganger was slightly faster than him. If he did not know the inside information, Zhu Yi would have already officially come into contact with Ding of Shenzhou. Hao Yang's doppelganger's facial features were almost the same as Zhu Yi's. However, when he unleashed his martial arts supernatural powers, his fists cracked the heavens and the earth, and his palms could push mountains and fill up the seas. Kai Fengzhou's expression was as calm as usual. Two clouds, one black and one white, were like two divine dragons, shuttling in the void. He had a mild temperament, but when he unleashed supernatural powers and spells, the momentum was extremely fierce and sharp. It was just that he did not have much killing intent. Even so, it was still extremely fierce. If Zhu Yi was not careful, he would immediately suffer a great loss. The same supernatural power, because the cultivator's understanding was different, could be unleashed in a completely different style. Kai Fengzhou's lineage traced back to the head of the four heroes of Taishu, Wen Qiang. Not only was he recognized as the strongest among the four heroes of Taishu, but he was also the most incisive person in actual combat. The style of his supernatural power was the path of fierceness and sharpness. Although it was not completely different from the usual ethereal and carefree feeling of the Taishu Temple, it was still unique and its characteristics were obvious. Kai Fengzhou had a mild temperament, but his cultivation of the supernatural power was more or less influenced by his lineage. However, he was also a great cultivator of the Tao integration realm, and his understanding of the supernatural power had been integrated into it. Therefore, when he unleashed his spells, he was actually much gentler. Wu Mingqi, who was from the same lineage as him, unleashed supernatural power even more fiercely than him. However, no matter how gentle he was, Kai Fengzhou was also a Dao integration expert who had been famous for many years. Moreover, Wen Qiang's lineage had always attached great importance to actual combat. As Kai Fengzhou's hands changed hand seals, streams of dermic power that blended yin and yang surged out, stirring up the void. Layers of space overlapped, and the originally shapeless void transformed into a large bell that covered the head of Zhu Yi's Hao-Yang doppelganger. It was a top-notch great supernatural power of the lineage of the void yin-yang Dao infinite yin and yang wonderful world of void. It could turn the power of the void into a wonderful world, suppress the enemy, and then refine the enemy with the endless power of yin and yang. As far as Kai Fengzhou was concerned, he didn't have a strong hatred for Xianmen Tianzong, and he didn't want to fight with Zhu Yi to death. However, Ding of Shenzhou was involved, so he couldn't afford to be careless. Although he didn't know the fight between Lin Feng and Shoichi Daishan outside, he was sure that this was the core area of Ding of Shenzhou. If Zhu Yi got his hands on it, he would definitely lose the upper hand. Of course, Zhu Yi wouldn't just wait for death. However, although Hao Yang's doppelganger was powerful and the Astro Sovereign's martial arts were overbearing, he was only at the void return level after all. Facing Kai Fengzhou, who was a Dao reunion cultivator from the Taishu Temple, he was still not strong enough. Hao Yang's doppelganger couldn't escape from the infinite yin and yang wonderful world of void. Instead, its dermic power was being worn down by the power of yin and yang in this small world. Good. Zhu Yi's expression didn't change. He shouted in a low voice. As the dermic power surged all over Hao Yang's doppelganger, his eyes suddenly changed. One eye was extremely dark, and the other eye was extremely dark. As the light and dark reversed, many alternating bright and dark characters appeared in the void. These characters of light and dark wrote a shocking chapter together. Then, they turned into a shocking golden bridge, which appeared out of nowhere and directly hit Kai Fengzhou's infinite yin and yang wonderful world of void. Endless chanting sounded along with the appearance of the golden bridge, which kept echoing between heaven and earth. Carried on the past and opened up the future, transcended everything, passed on everything, and brought everyone in the world to the Nirvana world. For a moment, it seemed that the world created by Kai Fengzhou, a Dao reunion cultivator, couldn't stop Zhu Yi's golden bridge which seemed to be leading the world. After years of continuous cultivation and study, Zhu Yi could also use the dermic spells of the Book of Dao Deity that he had learned from the Book of Dao Deity through Hao Yang's doppelganger. Although it wasn't as agile and sharp as the real body, it still shouldn't be underestimated. Even Kai Fengzhou's infinite yin and yang wonderful world of void couldn't stop the surging momentum. Under the impact of the golden bridge, it kept shaking. A doppelganger also has such a remarkable technique. It's really extraordinary. Kai Fengzhou sighed and stretched out his palms in front of him, palms facing each other. The black and white airflows around his body, which were like long dragons, spiraled from the left and right sides and converged in the center of his palms, forming a whirlpool that kept spinning. This whirlpool kept spinning, and in the end, it gradually transformed into a strange light ball that looked like a heavy fruit. Countless talismans of the Grand Tao surged out from within the fruit, and they emanated a powerful concept that was boundlessly vast and filled with boundless energy. It caused the heavens and the earth within the small divine prefecture world to tremble. It was Kai Fengzhou who had activated his own Dao fruit, the yin-yang cycle Dao fruit. This Dao fruit's color was intertwined with black and white, as if countless tiny black and white stripes were rolled together. However, every stripe was clear, and there wasn't a trace of mixing between black and white. It didn't blend, but it reflected a perfect combination that was mysterious and unfathomable. Kai Fengzhou's palms gently separated, and his yin-yang cycle Dao fruit fell onto the world formed by the infinite yin and yang wonderful world of void and merged with it. The golden bridge formed by Zhu Yi's Saints chapter was about to break free from the shackles before it, but the world it was in suddenly changed. The yin and yang energies that densely covered the world suddenly started spinning, and the entire world turned into a huge cyclone that kept spinning. Heaven and earth seemed to be separated, turning into two parts, one top and one bottom, with Zhu Yi sandwiched in the middle. The huge whirlpool, the top and bottom parts, spun at the same time, but in opposite directions. It was as if the world had turned into a huge millstone. With every spin, the huge power grew. As the millstone spun, the power grew. There seemed to be no end to the growth of the power, as if there would never be a limit. With yin and yang as the pushing force, with the world as the millstone, it wanted to crush everything that was sandwiched in between. This was the Dharma spell of the great Tao that was on par with the infinite yin and yang wonderful world of void yin-yang crush, heaven and earth grind. The same Dharma spell used by different people was like the difference between clouds and mud. Bai Shiqian could not compare to Qin Xingyu, and there was no comparison between Qin Xingyu and Kai Fengzhou. When Kai Fengzhou executed the yin-yang crush, heaven and earth grind Dharma spell, even Zhu Yi's Hao Yang clone felt like it could not withstand it. It was as if it was about to be crushed bit by bit. The speed was not fast, but it was filled with an unstoppable feeling, making one feel tormented and despair. In particular, Kai Fengzhou was using the infinite yin and yang wonderful world of void as the foundation. When he executed the yin-yang crush, heaven and earth grind Dharma spell, it was equivalent to combining the two Dharma spells into one, reaching a new height that ordinary people could not imagine. Even a Dao integration stage expert would find it difficult to resist the power of the perfect combination of the two top-notch Dharma spells of the void yin-yang Dao. Under such terrifying power, the golden bridge formed by the chapter of the saints written by Zhu Yi's Hao Yang clone was also on the verge of collapse. The grand intention of guiding all living beings to transcend heaven and earth was now faced with the danger of being suppressed by the entire world. Furthermore, this world could be completely destroyed at any time. The great terror and power contained within it would make one feel even more fearful. It's not my true body after all. Zhu Yi's expression was the same as usual. He only shook his head lightly and pointed his right index finger at his glabella. My true body is here. Even if I don't use the Paramitha Golden Bridge, let's have another battle. Just as Zhu Yi was about to use the Void Realm Mystic technique, his eyes suddenly flickered, and Kai Fengzhou also frowned. The void in the distance suddenly split open, and a figure suddenly rushed in front of Kai Fengzhou at a speed that was difficult for the naked eye to capture, and punched out. The newcomer was tall and burly, handsome, and dressed in purple robes. It was Shi Tianhao. Shi Tianhao's speed was extremely fast, and his powerful physical strength erupted. He was no longer traveling through the void, but directly crushing the void. He was so domineering that he could not even be bothered to travel through the void. Anything that blocked his way, including the invisible space, would be torn apart. Kai Fengzhou's heart skipped a beat. Even with his dermic power and divine sense, he felt that Shi Tianhao's movements were extremely fast. With a thought, Kai Fengzhou raised his palm and slapped down, blocking Shi Tianhao's iron fist. The 9 heavens of Taishu technique, the 4 heavens of Taishu, and the universal sacred hand, the strongest martial arts magic of the Taishu temple. Under the violent collision, the endless vitality in the void above White Cloud Mountain collapsed, and the heaven and earth trembled slightly. Spiritual qi flowed chaotically, and the interior of the little Kelowna world seemed to have caved in because of the collision between the two. Shi Tianhao's tall and burly body swayed in the air, and his forward momentum suddenly stopped, and he almost lost his footing. Kai Fengzhou, on the other hand, was sent flying backward by him. Even the attack that was aimed at Zhu and Hao Yang's doppelganger below was difficult to continue. Chapter 10:10. Kai Fengzhou forcefully blocked Shi Tianhao's punch, and his body flew backward from the impact. For a moment, his primordial spirit could no longer maintain its human form, and turned into a black and white whirlpool similar to the yin-yang wheel Dao fruit. But after a moment, he regained his balance. This lad's physical strength is really strong. Even a great demon in the integration of the astral soul realm is only SOSO. Seeing Shi Tianhao here, and then looking at Zhu Yi, Kai Fengzhou could not help but sigh in his heart. Shi Tianhao stood still and smiled. Second senior brother, there's no need to waste your real body's time. Just leave this to me, you can go up the mountain. He twisted his neck, looked at Kai Fengzhou and nodded. The Taishu mystic technique is indeed extraordinary. Now, in terms of pure physical strength, many great demons in the integration of the astral soul realm were not as good as Shi Tianhao. Kai Fengzhou performed the universal sacred palm, and was sent flying backward by him, and his primordial spirit almost became unstable. However, Kai Fengzhou was a Dharma cultivator after all. Physical strength and martial arts fighting were not his forte. He was repelled by Shi Tianhao, and his attack on Zhu Yi's Hao Yang doppelganger had to be interrupted. Zhu Yi escaped and stared at Kai Fengzhou. Just now, when he was trapped by Kai Fengzhou's spell, with Zhu Yi's personality, he naturally wanted to get back at him. However, through the exchange just now, Zhu Yi could already confirm that his Hao Yang doppelganger was not a match for Kai Fengzhou. If he wanted to settle the score with Kai Fengzhou, he needed to replace his real body. However, firstly, the effect of the two realms void seconds technique would be affected by the power of the boundaries. Secondly, Zhu Yi's original body was roaming the heavens. At this moment, he happened to encounter a fortuitous encounter, so it would be a pity to leave. Therefore, after frowning slightly, he still nodded. There's still time. Zhu Yi looked at Shi Tianhao and said, "Little junior brother, I'll leave it to you." With that, he descended towards White Cloud Mountain in Little Kelowna World. Kai Fengzhou shook his head. "Please wait a moment." He put his palms together lightly, and streams of black and white intertwined magic power surged, covering the entire world. Shi Tianhao raised his eyebrows. "Are you going to fight both of us at once?" He suddenly took a step forward, shattering the void as he charged towards Kai Fengzhou once again. Zhu Yi's Hao Yang doppelganger also turned around and stopped. He straightened his palm and waved it horizontally, cutting off a black and white airflow in front of him. "I wouldn't do this anywhere else, but this is White Cloud Mountain," Kai Fengzhou smiled. "Even if it's only White Cloud Mountain created by Ding of Shenzhou." Hearing that, Shi Tianhao and Zhu Yi's hearts stirred at the same time. Then, they saw Kai Fengzhou floating between the heavens and the earth, and streams of magic power that resembled black and white silk entwined around White Cloud Mountain. White Cloud Mountain's aura instantly fluctuated slightly. White Cloud Mountain's movement caused the flow of spirit energy in the entire Little Kelowna world to fluctuate as well. A large amount of spirit energy gathered towards White Cloud Mountain and gradually turned into a white cloud pillar that soared into the sky. Zhu Yi's Hao Yang doppelganger wanted to get closer, but it was blocked by the white cloud pillar. Meanwhile, Kai Fengzhou himself was fighting against Shi Tianhao. What Wang Lin knew, Zhu Yi and Shi Tianhao naturally knew as well. When Xia Huang sacrificially refined Ding of Shenzhou, Taishu Temple had already been developing in White Cloud Mountain for many years. They were very familiar with the flow of spirit energy fluctuations in the Divine Land at that time. This was the place where Taishu Temple established its Tao. Whether it was the first Taishu Taoist or later Taishu Temple cultivators, when they were perfecting and organizing their own Tao techniques, they would naturally have a connection with the special situation of White Cloud Mountain. In today's vast thousand domains and the vast land of the Divine Land, these might not be of much use. However, in the Divine Land Cauldron, which was transformed from the spiritual power of the Divine Land Cauldron and was similar to the vast land of the Divine Land in ancient times, it was still useful. Kai Fengzhou made a hand seal with his left hand and flicked his right hand. A small white wooden stick the length of a palm flew out of his hand and landed in the void. The wooden stick grew in the wind and instantly turned into a huge wooden pillar that was more than 10,000 feet long. The surface of this huge white wooden pillar was engraved with auspicious clouds that exuded a powerful aura of Dharma power. It was a magic treasure of transformation level that Kai Fengzhou carried with him. Although it had not reached the Mahayana realm, it still had great power. With Kai Fengzhou, a Tao integration realm expert, driving the magic cloud pillar, it was even more magical. With the help of the spirit cloud pillar, Kai Fengzhou stalled Shi Tianhao and Zhu Yi's Hao Yang doppelganger. However, at the same time, he could not go down to White Cloud Mountain. Mu Xian, Xingyu, Chaiyang, take the others up the mountain and enter the belly of the mountain from the top. There is no key point there. At Kai Fengzhou's order, Mu Xian, Chen Xingyu, Guo Qiaoyang, and the other successors of Taishu Temple rushed up White Cloud Mountain together. Yu Hongyan's red eyebrows gradually raised. He waved his hand and took the lead to fly up White Cloud Mountain. Li Yuanfang, Luo Qinggu, and the others followed. In order to block Shi Tianhao and Zhu Yi's Haoyang doppelganger, the Spirit Cloud Pillar could not take care of White Cloud Mountain itself, but Kai Fengzhou would rather do so. If he had to choose between Shi Tianhao, Zhu Yi, or Yu Hongyan and the others, he would naturally choose to trap Shi Tianhao and Zhu Yi first. As for Yu Hongyan and the others, Kai Fengzhou could only entrust them to Chen Xingyu, Guo Qiaoyang, and the other juniors. It would be even more difficult for them to deal with Shi Tianhao or Zhu Yi's Haoyang doppelganger. Xianmen Tianzong and the Taishu Temple cultivators climbed to the top of White Cloud Mountain together. They saw a small clearing at the top of the mountain. Apart from that, there was nothing else. However, the Taishu Temple cultivators, who had already learned the trick from Kai Fengzhou, quickly rushed to the center of the clearing. Mu Xian, Guo Qiaoyang, and Chen Xingyu stood in a triangular formation and cast their spells. Streams of transcendence energy poured into the peak of White Cloud Mountain beneath their feet. "Open!" The three of them shouted in unison. The spells in their hands changed, and a beam of light shot up into the sky from the center of the three. With the beam of light as the center, a huge formation gradually appeared. The formation projected into the air, revealing a light shadow that looked like a cave. Li Yuanfang's expression was calm. He closed his eyes, and purple light flickered around his body, transforming into mysterious talismans that gathered above his head. He had cast the treasure mirror formation technique. Numerous talismans quickly and accurately constructed a small and delicate magic circle in accordance with extremely complex rules. Like a round mirror, a mirror-like beam of light shone out and fell on the large magic circle in the center of the mountain peak. Time was running out. Seeing that the Taishu Temple cultivators were already trying to enter the cave, Li Yuanfang did not rely on his own senses to observe. He directly used the treasure mirror formation technique and instantly saw the mysteries of the formation in front of him. "Open!" Li Yuanfang also shouted. The mirror light that the treasure mirror formation technique had cast on the opponent's formations suddenly flashed. Then, an 8 trigrams formation suddenly appeared in the center of the mirror light. The 8 trigrams formation kept expanding, and in an instant, it covered the opponent's formation. Now that his cultivation had reached the middle stage of Yuaning, Li Yuanfang's cultivation in the Tao of formations was truly invincible below the primordial divinity realm. Even many primordial divinity realm cultivators were no match for him in the Tao of formations. Just now, when he cast the treasure mirror formation technique, Li Yuanfang also cast the mysterious pivot 8 trigrams formation. When this formation was cast, the cave in the air was still there, unaffected, but the control of the formation had been taken away by Li Yuanfang. The light that shrouded the formation repelled some of the Taishu Temple cultivators outside the formation. Chen Xingyu, Guo Qiaoyang, and a few others entered the cave at the first moment. Mu Xian was originally responsible for maintaining the formation, but unexpectedly, she was also repelled by the formation. The Taishu Temple disciples who could not enter the cave in time were all repelled by the light of the formation. Silently, Li Yuanfang said, "I'll bring up the rear, you guys go in." Yu Hongyan shook his head and said, "The situation in the cave is unknown. I'll bring up the rear, 6th junior brother, you go in and lead the team." As he spoke, a dark light flashed in his hand, and a dark green halberd appeared. It was ferocious and filled with a terrifying aura that could destroy everything. Li Yuanfang pondered for a moment. He was never a hesitant person, so he immediately nodded and said, "Okay." He turned to look at Luo Qinggu and said, "Little junior sister, you lead the way, I'll be right there." Luo Qinggu did not waste any time. She nodded and rushed into the cave first, followed by Tang Jun, Han Yang, and the others. Li Yuanfang's main body was the last to enter, but he still left his spirit doppelganger to continue to maintain the formation and support Yu Hongyan. Yu Hongyan waved the army destroyer halberd in his hand and pointed it at Mu Xian and the other Taishu Temple disciples. His expression was calm and he did not say a word. In reality, she was still not in her peak condition. In the battle to kill Blood Mane Great Sage, her right shoulder was directly pierced through by her opponent. Her tendons and bones were broken, and she lost a lot of blood. This was an extremely serious injury for a martial adept, and she needed a long time to recuperate. If she did not treat it properly, it could even cause her strength to regress. After Luo Qingwu used the Life Spirit Sword of Earth, Zhu Yi gave her a Phoenix Nirvana curse, which prevented her from having any future problems and allowed her to continue fighting. However, it was beyond her ability to force herself to unleash her strongest power in a short period of time. But at this moment, Yu Hongyan stood with his spear in front of him. His aura of one man holding the pass against 10,000 people still shrouded the entire peak of White Cloud Mountain, and the group of Taishu Temple disciples did not dare to take a step forward. Mu Xian, Shan Xiang, and Ding Runfeng stared at Yu Hongyan. Shan Xiang's eyes were filled with uncontrollable hatred and anger, and at the same time, deep fear. 10 years ago in the colossal world, it was this red-haired girl who beat his junior sister, who was also his lover, Bai Shiqian, to the brink of death. All these years, every time Shan Xiang saw Bai Shiqian, who was seriously injured, he could not suppress the anger in his heart. When he was facing the second-generation true disciples of Xianmen Tianzong, such as Han Yang and Yang Tai, Shan Xiang could barely suppress it. But now that Yu Hongyan was standing in front of him, the hatred that had been accumulated for many years instantly reached its peak. Compared to Shan Xiang, Ding Runfeng felt a deep sense of helplessness and despair. It was a feeling that surpassed fear and hatred. After the battle in West Hill City, it was not that Ding Runfeng did not think of cultivating hard and fighting Yu Hongyan again. After all, strictly speaking, Bai Shiqian was actually fighting Yu Hongyan on his behalf. But at this moment, when he saw Yu Hongyan, Ding Runfeng was at a loss and dispirited. At that time, Yu Hongyan was at the early stage of Golden Elixir, while he was at the middle stage of Golden Elixir, and Bai Shiqian was at the late stage of Golden Elixir. But now, although he had successfully formed his nascent soul, the red-haired girl opposite him was already at the middle stage of Yuanying. Chapter 10-11. Junior Brother Ding, calm down and concentrate. Otherwise, you'll lose without even fighting, Mu Xian suddenly said. Ding Runfeng came to his senses and revealed a bitter smile at the corner of his mouth. Mu Xian looked calm as usual. She looked at Yu Hongyan indifferently and walked forward step by step. She said faintly, "The opponent has at least one magic treasure. Don't interfere in this battle." Ding Runfeng nodded lightly. Shan Xiang suddenly turned to look at Mu Xian. Mu Xian said softly, "Junior Brother Shan, even I am not ready yet. But because of the Taoist technique, I can't wait any longer. You are different. You can still wait, so don't be reckless. This woman's martial arts are violent. If you lose to her, you will either die or be injured." The anger in Shan Xiang's eyes finally faded and he calmed down again. But after calming down, Shan Xiang could not help but reveal a bitter smile. He could not even beat the martial nephew of the late stage of Golden Elixir. If he went up to fight with Yu Hongyan now, he would not be able to avenge his old hatred and would only add new hatred. Ding Runfeng heard Mu Xian's words and sighed secretly. If he could not beat her now, he was afraid that there would be no hope in the future. This was his personal experience and the reason for his despair and loss. Compared to Shan Xiang's anger and Ding Runfeng's disappointment, Mu Xian's expression was always calm. It was as if the person in front of her was not a disciple of Xianmen Tianzong. But most of Yu Hongyan's attention fell on this alienated and indifferent woman. Even if there were other disciples of Taishu Temple, such as Ding Runfeng who had a pure yang body and Shan Xiang who was at the middle stage of Yuanying like Yu Hongyan's eyes were always fixed on Mu Xian in front of him. Behind her, while Li Yuanfang's in-spirit doppelganger was guarding the formation, more than half of its attention fell on Mu Xian. Mu Xian walked towards Yu Hongyan step by step. As she walked, she said softly, "Treasure, please show yourself. Above her head, a bright light shone. Black, white, yellow, green, red, and blue lights flashed together. In the six-colored light, a small sword only 1 foot long appeared. Yu Hongyan gently raised his red eyebrows and said, "Oh, is that the hexagonal sword?" The small sword that appeared above Mu Xian's head was a magic weapon. It was the hexagonal sword, the magic weapon that Pang Jie used to protect himself in the late stage of Yuaning. In the past, during the first opening ceremony of Xianmen Tianzong, Pang Jie also came with this magic weapon, but he was trapped by the yin and yang life and death formation and could not escape. Later, when Pang Jie returned to White Cloud Mountain, the hexagonal sword also went back with him. When Pang Jie came out again, he was directly suppressed by the Taishu demon suppressing steel. The hexagonal sword was brought back to the Taishu temple by the Xianlin Taoist. This time, when the reserve of Taishu temple entered the desolate ancient sea of stars, the elders of the temple gave this magic weapon to Mu Xian. During the first opening ceremony of Xianmen Tianzong, Yu Hongyan was also present, so he naturally recognized the hexagonal sword. "My teacher, Pang Jie." Mu Xian opened her mouth slightly and said these 4 words in a calm tone. Yu Hongyan's expression did not change at all. He only nodded. The army destroyer Imperial Halberd in his hand vibrated slightly, and the evil power of the destruction of heaven and earth became stronger. It faced the 6-colored light around the hexagonal sword from a distance, neither giving way to the other. An old voice came from the hexagonal sword, "What a great weapon!" Mu Xian said softly, "Thank you, Senior Hexagon." The hexagonal sword said, "This goddess's magic power is extraordinary. Be careful not to let her get close to you, or else it will be very difficult for you to deal with her." After saying that, the sword body let out a soft hum, and its overall shape began to change. Its body was covered in 6-colored light, and the other 5 colors gradually converged, leaving only green. And from the center of the green light, accompanied by a mighty dragon's roar, a giant ship that was thousands of feet long and had 3 floors rushed out. It crushed the void with the momentum of breaking through the waves, and was unstoppable. It was one of the hexagonal sword's forms, the flying dragon ship. Mu Xian landed on the flying dragon ship, and the huge ship soared into the sky, but it seemed to be very agile. It passed through layers of void, and its position was hard to determine. It broke through layers of obstacles as if nothing could stop it, and it could move freely. On the flying dragon ship, Mu Xian did not advance, but retreated. She separated the layers of space, and tried to put as much distance between her and Yu Hongyan as possible. She opened her palm, and light gathered on top of her palm, gradually condensing into a ball of light. In the ball of light, 9 orifices could be vaguely seen, and from each orifices came a loud and clear song. It was as if there was a god living in each orifice. 9 orifices, 9 gods awakened at the same time, shaking the world. Rays of light shot out from the 9 orifices, and in each ray of light, there were mysterious talismans flashing. Endless light poured down like a storm of meteors, and it hit Yu Hongyan's head. Mu Xian stood on the flying dragon ship, shuttling between the void. The rays of light that were activated by the Supreme 9 Aperture's Real God's Bao Qi formula were like divine punishment falling from the sky, and instantly covered the entire peak of White Cloud Mountain. Yu Hongyan's expression was calm, and he gently waved the army-breaching imperial halberd in his hand and swept away the rays of light. Suddenly, she stopped in her tracks. In that moment, the orifices all over Yu Hongyan's body opened and closed, and his whole body seemed to be emitting light, like twinkling stars. Following Yu Hongyan's movements, the stars seemed to come to life, and their positions were erratic. During this period, there was a kind of change in the universe, and the mysterious principles of the stars' displacement, as well as a majestic power. The power of the stars was so great, and the movement of the stars was such a spectacular thing. At this moment, the orifices all over Yu Hongyan's body were naturally not as good as the real stars, but the movement of the qi and blood in his body had comprehended the principles of the stars' displacement, and an amazing power burst out. She suddenly took 3 steps. When she took the first step, There seemed to be countless doppelgangers, which were as elusive as the stars in the universe. When she took the second step, the numerous doppelgangers instantly shrank to 28. Although she was holding the army-breaching imperial halberd, the martial art of Astro Sovereign, and the martial art conception of the 28 constellations Star Divine Fist were clearly integrated into the spear. When she took the third step, all the doppelgangers merged into one, and the figure of Yu Hongyan was revealed. But he was not in the same place anymore, but directly on the flying dragon ship, and face-to-face with Mu Xian, and they were very close. Astro Sovereign's martial art killing move, Star-Changing Constellation. Since Zhu Yi's doppelganger of Hao Yang had obtained this powerful martial art, Xianmen Tianzong and the others had successfully integrated it into their own martial art system. Although the star-changing constellation of Yu Hongyan was not as pure as Zhu Yi's doppelganger of Hao Yang, it was also a new style, and it was more fierce and violent. Her body swayed, from the soles of her feet to her legs, and then to her waist, along the spine all the way up to the top of her head. Her whole body swayed fiercely, and the power of the army-breaching imperial halberd in her hand became even fiercer. As she swayed, it seemed like she was going to swing the stars down. Seeing this, Mu Xian's pupils slightly contracted. The flying dragon ship under her feet also shook a little, and an old voice came out, "Change." As the light flickered, the shape of the ship changed, and the green light turned into a faint blue light. Under the blue light, the huge ship that was hundreds of feet long shrank rapidly, and finally turned into a blue shield. At the critical moment, it blocked between Mu Xian and Yu Hongyan. The hexagonal sword changed shape again, and it was the motionless void shield. The moment the motionless void shield appeared, Yu Hongyan attacked with the army-breaching imperial halberd in his hand. The star-changing constellation of constellation was combined with the power of the mighty thunderbolt divine spear, and it was extremely ferocious. Mu Xian took a deep breath, and the light on top of her head lit up, and a shadow that was almost hundreds of feet tall suddenly appeared. The face of the shadow was blank, and there were no facial features at all. It was wearing a Taoist robe that was embroidered with the sun, moon, and stars, as well as mountains and seas, and it was stepping on a large white cloud. Its whole body exuded an incomparably majestic aura, as if it was the truth of this world, setting the rules and order, and representing the vast Tao of heaven and earth. It was the law of heaven and earth that Mu Xian had obtained from cultivating the supreme Wang Qing Tao. At the same time, Yu Hongyan's army-breaching imperial halberd had already hit the motionless void shield that the hexagonal sword had transformed into. That fierce and violent power made the motionless void shield tremble, and the condensed blue light was constantly shattered. The tip of the green and black halberd touched the surface of the motionless void shield like a hot knife through butter, and a loud "kacha" sound was instantly heard. The center of the surface of the motionless void shield had already faintly cracked, and it had a tendency to expand continuously. Its magic treasure primordial spirit let out a muffled groan, and it was full of pain. When Mu Xian saw this, her usually indifferent eyes also had a few ripples. After Yu Hongyan got close to her, the attack that was aimed at her was too fierce. If it wasn't for the hexagonal sword that blocked it for her, she would have been seriously injured even if she didn't die. The concept of the motionless void shield was already very high. Even if the outside world collapsed and the earth cracked, I will always live in the motionless void, unbreakable and indestructible. But Yu Hongyan's attack combined with the army-breaching imperial halberd was too powerful, and it actually exceeded the limit of the motionless void shield. Both magic treasures were in the hands of Yuanying stage cultivators, and neither could exert their full power. Normally, when they fought normally, they would not use the motionless void shield and focus on defense. Even if they were not a match for the army-breaching imperial halberd, their defense would not be broken in one round. This result could only mean one thing. The user of the army-breaching imperial halberd was stronger. After Mu Xian's eyes flashed, she quickly regained her calmness. She and her law of heaven and earth moved their hands together, and then they crossed through space and pressed behind the motionless void shield. Then, together with the magic treasure and the huge law of heaven and earth, they turned into nothingness. Although the supernatural power of infinite transformation was not a true defensive spell, when used at the right time, the effect was better than other defensive methods. In the past, Yu Hongyan's cultivation was still low. When she participated in the Desolate Sea Assembly when she was in the foundation building stage, she once used the characteristic of the infinite transformation of cultivators below the primordial spirit stage to defeat her opponent. But this time, her spear had already touched the motionless void shield, and the power had completely exploded. At this time, Mu Xian used the infinite transformation of infinite transformation again, and this time, she fought for a chance of survival for herself and the hexagonal sword. However, Yu Hongyan's reaction was fast, and her martial path supernatural power was even more flexible. After the army breaching Imperial halberd missed, she immediately changed the direction of the spear, and the second spear stabbed towards Mu Xian, who had returned to reality. But at this time, Mu Xian suddenly put her palms together, and her physical body's eyes became dull. A faintly discernible light shadow came out from the top of her head, and it was her soul that left her body. At the same time, the motionless void shield that was flashing with blue light forcefully suppressed its own injuries, and changed its appearance again. At the same time, the treasure light around it changed from blue to black. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.